Chapter 4188. When he saw that there was no movement on the bed, that pair of dark eyes flashed with a complicated light. Is this what D4 meant by looking for the outer robe? The young girl curled up on the bed. Her slender and soft body leaned against the soft pillow. It accentuated the girl's soft and beautiful figure. Her hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The bedding covered the girl's waist. When the young girl raised her eyes to meet his gaze, that pair of eyes that were like the most flawless jade in the world crashed into his heart like colored glass. It didn't look like he was looking for a robe. It could almost be said that from the moment she said she wanted to pack up and follow him to see Diemo. She just stayed on the bed, not moving at all. Obviously, right from the start, she had no intention of following him to meet Diemo. Yiqing Luo exchanged glances with the other party for several breaths and couldn't help but frown. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but when the other party's gaze landed on her, she felt as if she was dreaming. There was an obvious change in the expression in the other party's eyes. She hid the deep thoughts in her eyes and leaned lazily against the headboard. She deliberately relaxed her voice and said lazily, "I'm really sorry to have made Master Qiao come all the way here for nothing. I might have caught a cold when I was sleeping just now, and now I'm in a coma. I'm afraid I can't go with you to see Yaxin." As she spoke, she raised her hand and rubbed her forehead. "Were you feeling unwell?" the man blurted out almost instinctively. The urgency and concern in his tone made Yiqing Luo raise her brows. As if sensing that his emotions were not right, the man coughed softly and straightened his attitude. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm sure His Majesty will be very worried if he knows that Madame D isn't feeling well. So, may I trouble Patriarch Qiao to inform Yaxin about this?" Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she put on an unwell and weak look. It made the other party's gaze fixated on her even more intensely. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to ask them to leave, that person suddenly walked over with large strides. With a few steps, he was already standing beside the bed. Yiqing Luo looked up. She looked into the pair of dark and repressed eyes. Patriarch Qiao would never look at her with such a gaze. "When did you find out?" He lowered his head and quietly looked at her. His eyes were dark, and he had no intention of hiding it. Yiqing Luo played dumb. "What? What did you see that I'm not the Qiao family head?" The man didn't beat around the bush with her. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face slowly converged. It seemed that he did not intend to continue pretending. Yes, the person before him had the exact same face and voice as Qiao clan's patriarch. However, he was not the real Patriarch Qiao. How did he recognize me? It should be from the very beginning, because Diemo Xin knew her current condition. So how could he possibly let family head Qiao invite her to the front hall for a discussion, even if there was a need for discussion? Even then, he would take the initiative to come to her room. Then, she purposely probed. She had to tidy herself up again before meeting Diemo Xin. If it was the real Qiao family head, he was naturally aware of her current situation. He knew that right now, she didn't even have the strength to tidy herself up. How could she possibly get off the bed alone and walk out of the room to meet Diemo Xin? So, from that moment onwards, she was certain. The person outside the door was not family head Qiao. She originally thought that she could drag on for a period of time until Diemo Xin rushed over. Chapter 4189. He directly admitted that he was impersonating Patriarch Qiao. This honesty made her not know how to drag the time. "From what I know, you don't know much about Patriarch Qiao. How did you tell?" He opened his mouth to ask again, his eyes burning as he stared at her face without blinking. This kind of gaze. Yiqing Luo vaguely felt that it looked familiar. It seemed as though she had seen this kind of gaze somewhere before. "Yiqing Luo, can I assume that, no matter what disguise I put on in front of you, you will still be able to recognize me?" He suddenly leaned downwards, getting closer to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as her slender brows creased. "You are Palace Lord of Secluded Palace." It's him. That person who impersonated Diemo Xin. The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace. It's actually him again, running over to impersonate Patriarch Qiao again. Yi Ching Luo raised her hand and directly pressed against his chest, which was getting nearer. You like to impersonate others so much. The person who was recognized, didn't panic at all. Instead, he laughed lowly. His laughter carried a tinge of satisfaction. As expected, you recognized me. It really was him. Yi Ching Luo's expression congealed, unable to understand what the palace lord of secluded palace's strange laughter represented. What do you want to do? Yi Ching Luo raised her eyes to look at him. He was still smiling as he looked at Yi Ching Luo's face. His gaze was deep and filled with possessiveness. Follow me. Yi Ching Luo's body stiffened slightly as she was on high alert. The expression on her face maintained a languid elegance. To where you should go, he replied in a deep voice. His voice was no longer that deep and dignified Patriarch Xiao's voice, but belonged to him, a slightly hoarse voice. Yi Ching Luo's eyelashes twitched acutely. His words were no longer, "I'll bring you away," but "to where you should go." This change made Yi Ching Luo's expression change slightly. "It's that person who asked you to come over?" He gave a gentle smile as he slowly bent down, placing both hands on her shoulders. "Yi Ching Luo, I won't let you escape again. Follow me." As he said that, his hand had already embraced her petite body. Originally, it was just a light touch. But as soon as he touched it, he suddenly realized that the person in his arms had no intention of struggling at all. She was very obedient. He couldn't help but lower his head to take a few more glances. He tried to pick her up. Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace. Yi Ching Luo suddenly cried out as she raised her hand and pressed against his arm. The force was very light. He paused and did not continue. The girl's eyes were calm. She looked up at him from such a close distance. "Ashin is not far away. Are you sure you can take me away safely?" He shook his head. His gaze was deep and gentle. "You're willing to leave with me. The meaning is different." That gaze made Yi Ching Luo extremely disgusted. To be honest, until now, she couldn't believe it. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace said that he liked her. He leaned over slightly and leaned towards Yi Ching Luo's ear. His voice was clear and soothing, very pleasant to listen to. But the words that came out of his mouth made Yi Ching Luo's face turn pale bit by bit. He said, "That bunch of brothers of yours who came all the way from Nirvana Realm, whether or not have a right to meet you again, will depend on your performance." Seeing Yi Ching Luo's entire body stiffening, her face pale, and her eyes looking at him in astonishment. Chapter 4190. Yi Ching Luo's eyes sunk. "What do you mean?" The smile at the corner of the man's mouth gradually widened. "It means exactly what it says." Yi Ching Luo suddenly raised her hand and tugged the man's collar. "What did you do to them?" However, the hand that was about to reach out fell powerlessly to the ground. She was agitated and angry. Her body was getting weaker and weaker. The man's eyes drooped as he looked at the hand on the side of the bed, and the young lady's gloomy, pale, and powerless face. "What's the matter with you?" He could tell that something was wrong with Yi Ching Luo, wearing Patriarch Xiao's face, revealing that kind of worried and obviously adoring gaze towards her. This indeed made Yi Ching Luo feel disgusted, adding on to the fact that she was worried about her own bunch of brothers. How could Yi Ching Luo possibly answer the man's question? She pursed her lips tightly as she turned her head to avoid the man's outstretched hand, repeating word by word. "What on earth did you do to them? What on earth do you want?" The man's hand landed on empty air. He wasn't annoyed, nor did he have the intention to force her. He slowly retracted his hand and gazed deeply at her face as his voice became gentle. "I can guarantee that their choice is absolutely safe, but their life and death is in your hands. How can I believe you?" Yi Ching Luo suppressed the fear and uneasiness in her heart as she forced herself to calm down as she asked. There were still a few days before the 3-month appointment with her brothers. They shouldn't be able to reach the Earth Realm from Nirvana Realm so quickly. After all, it was a place that spanned across 2 realms. This must be. He intentionally lied to her, trying to lure her into his trap. "I won't lie to you," the man replied softly as his thin lips pressed against her ear. "Moreover, you don't have the right to doubt, isn't it?" Yiqing Luo's slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly as the expression on her face turned gloomy. Yes, she had no doubts, no right to choose. Even if she told herself over and over again in her heart, her brothers didn't come to the Earth realm. But what if? She couldn't afford to gamble on this. She couldn't admit the consequences of this what if. I don't have much time. You also know that I don't have any power in the Palace of Darkness. He was very frank. With the face of Qiao family's master, he smiled gently and affectionately. If you follow me obediently, I can guarantee the safety of your brothers. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she raised her head slightly. Her cold eyes met with the man's without blinking. Then he slowly said, word by word, I will go with you. The corners of the man's mouth raised into a big smile. He said in a tone as if he was teasing a pet, that's a good girl. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the girl's head. When his palm came into contact with Dao Qi's body, Dao Qi's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo only felt a chill down her spine. She held back and looked at him. Aren't we leaving? Why aren't you leaving? The man chuckled softly and slowly straightened his body. He let go of her touch. One day, you will accept my touch. Yiqing Luo. She would never be able to accept it for the rest of her life. The man stood up straight and turned around. Let's go. Yiqing Luo gripped the bedding tightly. Her weak body made her unable to get down from the bed, but she didn't want the man to touch her. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she used her consciousness to summon Xiangui. Chapter 4191. He sensed an unusual movement. The man who was walking in front turned his head back alertly. When he saw that jade-colored object, a huge tortoise, a sturdy and flickering tortoise shell, and its body was coiled with something that looked like a snake or dragon, sticking out its scarlet tongue. That pair of tiny eyes even exuded a cold and sinister aura. This Palace Lord immediately took a step back as he stared at Black Tortoise vigilantly. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and touched Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as her figure moved slightly and sat on top of the tortoise shell. After she sat properly, her face was even paler than before. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Her breathing was also slightly panting, as though she was out of stamina. Palace Lord walked towards her as his brows creased tightly as he asked in a probing manner, Is your body unwell? Yiqing Luo's performance made one suspect if something had happened to her. That look was totally different from the flamboyant one she had seen previously. Even when they used her brothers to threaten her, she didn't show much of a reaction. Thinking of this, Palace Lord's eyes were filled with concern as he half squatted down and was about to check Yiqing Luo's pulse. Yiqing Luo only patted Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as she expressionlessly avoided Palace Lord's hand. Xiangui, let's go. After that, she slowly raised her head as she shot a glance at Palace Lord indifferently. What has it got to do with you if I'm not feeling well? Will you let me continue to rest in bed because of this? Palace Lord's throat tightened as he met Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze, unable to say a single word of rebuttal. He indeed wouldn't let Yiqing Luo continue to rest. If Yiqing Luo replied in this way, that would be tacitly admitting the fact that she was really not feeling well. If Yiqing Luo in this state followed him back to Palace Lord's, would there really be no other effects? His mind was in a whirl. The young lady had already been carried out of the room by Black Tortoise. He quickly chased up and blocked in front of the young lady. The young lady raised her head as she looked at him with a smile, which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord's emotions were fluctuating as he looked at the young lady's ridiculing gaze as his throat tightened. He was clearly worried that it would be unsafe and uncomfortable for the girl to sit on the Black Tortoise. But when his arm reached the girl's shoulder, the words that were on the tip of his tongue became, Black Tortoise is too big of a target. Will be discovered. I'll carry you. Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm. She raised her hand and blocked his outstretched hand. Her emotions were very indifferent. Xiangui can keep up with you. He had already lost count of how many times he had been rejected by the young lady. But every time, his heart would feel a sharp pain as if it was being torn apart. Something seemed to be hammering on his chest. Under the young girl's indifferent gaze, his stiff hand slowly retracted. He pursed his lips and did not speak again. He turned around and vanished in a thin air. Yi-Ching Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her slender fingers tightened. Xian Gui, keep up. No matter what, she had to make this trip. He summoned Xian Gui first. If anything urgent happened, Xian Gui's turtle shell would be able to handle it for some time. There was also Old Man's song. At the very least, he could buy some time. Even if Chi didn't manage to find DMO Xian in time. Tang Beiyuan and Lang Lixian hadn't appeared for a long time, which would attract DMO Xian's attention. She only needed to wait for DMO Xian to rush over. Then there wouldn't be much of a problem. But sometimes, no matter how perfect and precise her calculations were. But when things happened, Chapter 4192, the boundary between Earth Realm and Heaven Realm. A slender figure stood on the peak of the mountain, facing the wind. A black dress under the strong wind blew like a thick black fog, encircling that person's body. And behind that person stood two respectful ladies dressed in lotus green attire. Miss Bai, do you think Yi-Ching Luo will really come? One of the ladies with a vicious expression carefully probed. This was obviously a trap. Yi-Ching Luo was such an intelligent person. Would she really come? In front, the slender figure's red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful, but extremely distorted face surfaced a vicious expression. Yes, she will definitely come. The two ladies in lotus green attire exchanged glances. The other amiable-looking lady smiled. If Miss Bai says she will come, then Yi-Ching Luo will definitely come. Let's just wait patiently. That scoundrel has always been putting on airs, in order to let others say that she values relationships and righteousness. How could she not come? The slender figure's voice was very pleasant, but the tone was so cold that it made one's scalp go numb. Isn't she relying on the Overlord? This time round, let's see how she's going to escape from Miss Bai's palm. The vicious-looking lady sneered. The slender figure who was addressed as Miss Bai's smile turned even colder, as her gaze slowly fell onto the 10 over people who were hung on the cliff, covered with injuries. Those people, weren't they the World Mercenary Group's people? Sensing the slender figure's gaze, the young man who was hung upside down, his blue eyes were filled with an icy cold glint, shooting straight towards her. What are you staring at? The vicious-looking lady raised her profound energy as she struck a palm strike towards that person. The young man's throat felt a fishy sweetness, as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The other amiable-looking lady stopped her. Don't kill them, these are all tools to restrain Yi-Ching Luo. Her words paused for a moment as she continued. Letting them die now, how can it be as delightful as torturing them bit by bit in front of Yi-Ching Luo? Obviously, the lady was smiling, but the words that came out from her mouth made one tremble in fear. The three women looked at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. The laughter was sharp and piercing. The dozen or so people hanging at the edge of the cliff all looked angry, but they couldn't struggle at all. Captain, what should we do? The wounded youths whispered. Blue-eyed youngster Long Yunjan's expression was icy cold as his eyes were filled with flames. We must believe in Ching Luo. Yes, we must believe in our Luo. We will all be safe. The young girl beside him had a cold expression, but her words were filled with warmth and intimidating power. No matter how low their repeated voices were, they were still clearly heard by the slender figure at the edge of the mountain peak. The woman's eyes immediately became even more ruthless. He swung his arm. A long, soft whip appeared in her hand. She raised her whip and flung it towards the 10 over people hanging on the edge of the cliff. Yi-Ching Luo? Yi-Ching Luo. Yi-Ching Luo. Did you treat Yi-Ching Luo as a god? Do you think she can save you just because she's here? Stop dreaming. The whip was raised as it streaked across the air, giving out a swish-swish sound. A wisp of black, profound energy encircled the whip. This whip landed. Chapter 4193. The 10 over people's faces instantly turned pale. When Long Yunjan saw that soft whip descending, his body suddenly moved. Making use of the rope which was hanging him, he swung his body horizontally in front of those 10 over people. He attempted to use his own body to block the descending whip. His action made the young men and ladies' expressions changed as they cried out in shock, "Group leader," just as the soft whip was descending. Suddenly, a hurricane swept across. The air was filled with strong, profound energy. Following that, they saw that soft whip which was about to land on Long Yunjan's body was flung away by the strong energy. Immediately following that, they heard a lady's shocked cry and miserable shriek. The 10 over people looked over in shock. They saw that black-robed, slender lady who was standing at the side of the high peak was directly flung out as she fell heavily onto the ground. There was no trace of the high and mighty look which she had earlier. The 10 over people's gazes suddenly lit up. Their gazes swiftly moved around the surroundings. Qing Luo was here. Qing Luo was here. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. To them, the only person who would appear in time to save them was only Yi Qing Luo alone. Not only them were thinking this way. The lady who was flung out by the strong wind at the high peak also had the same thought. Under the support of 2 ladies dressed in lotus green robes, the slender figure stood up from the ground in a disheveled state. Her gaze was like a torch as she stared at the direction where the energy had come from. But a low and deep voice, extremely calm and dignified. "When did this palace lord allow you to take action against them?" The gloomy and cold, dignified voice instantly covered the entire air. Everything in the surroundings became cold and condensed. The slender figure suddenly froze as a glint of hatred flashed past her eyes. But very quickly, it was covered up by the charming expression on her face. The 2 ladies dressed in lotus green robes who were supporting her, on seeing the person, became extremely respectful as they bowed in fear and trepidation. "Palace Lord." The profound waves rippled. A tall and slender figure slowly walked out. He was still wearing that face of Patriarch Qiao, but his entire temperament was emitting a sinister and powerful aura, totally different from Patriarch Qiao. "There's no need to get angry, Palace Master." The slender figure spoke in a coquettish voice. Her young and beautiful face was filled with a flattering smile. Her smile and frown were both charming and enchanting. If it was an ordinary person, this smile could really make people fall head over heels for him. However, when the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her, his gaze didn't change at all. The slender figure seemed to be used to this and continued to smile. "They're just a few insignificant tools. What's the harm in killing them?" The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace turned cold and his sleeves fluttered. The thick black inchi wrapped around the slender figure and threw her to the ground again. The slender figure was thrown into confusion. It was accompanied by a cold and dignified voice. "Bai Mei, are you questioning me?" The slender figure, which was Bai Mei, fell to the ground in a sorry state. She curled up and trembled slightly. After hearing the threatening words of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, he couldn't help but shrink back and soften his voice. "No, I don't dare." Palace Master. When the other 2 ladies saw this, they tacitly welcomed the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace while looking behind her. Didn't Palace Master bring Yi Qing Luo here? Chapter 4194. Could it be that? Did the Palace Master fail? He wasn't able to bring Yi Qing Luo over? Even if he captured Yi Qing Luo's former brother to use him as a tool, he wasn't able to make Yi Qing Luo take the bait? Hall Head, Wu Yin, and Third Elder are looking for my mother? Suddenly, an extremely lazy voice sounded leisurely. Immediately following that, a blazing figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. The young lady was sitting on the back of a jade-green giant tortoise. 2 snake-like and dragon-like things were resting on the young lady's legs. Just as the young lady opened her mouth, those 2 intertwined things suddenly raised their heads. Jade-green eyes, scarlet snake head, it made one shudder. The young lady was leaning lazily on the tortoise shell. Her jet black hair was not tied up, looking slightly messy. However, this only served to further accentuate her pale face, which was devastatingly beautiful. "Yi Qing Luo." Those two ladies dressed in lotus-green robes stared blankly at Yi Qing Luo as they almost blurted out Yi Qing Luo's name. Their hearts were out of control as they started to jump nervously. This was fear emitted from their bones. Fear towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly. Her expression was lazy as her gaze swept past the both of them. She knew that Hall Head Wu Yin had joined the Nether Palace, but she had not expected that third elder had also joined the Nether Palace, all for the sake of fighting for the position of Linglong Palace Lord. If they knew the real use of the Linglong Palace Lord, would they put in so much effort just to become the Linglong Palace Lord? She scoffed lightly with some ridicule. When the slender figure saw Yi Qing Luo, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Amidst the excitement, it was mixed with resentment and hatred. New hatred and old hatred made her completely forget about the existence of the Palace Lord of the Nether Palace. Yi Qing Luo, you're indeed here. Before she could say the word here, what came towards her was a thick, austere aura. A gust of cold wind brushed past her. The young lady who was sitting on Black Tortoise's back had already passed her, charging forward. Even her peripheral vision had not landed on her. Yi Qing Luo's expression was solemn as Black Tortoise neared the edge of the peak. He saw a dozen people hanging at the edge of the cliff, their bodies riddled with scars. Her half-narrowed eyes were covered in a deep red, flowing light, and she was like a bloodthirsty Azura, cold and murderous. The young woman's aura suddenly burst forth. She got up and wanted to get off the Black Tortoise's back. Yi Qing Luo. The Palace Lord's figure flashed, and in a blink of an eye, he stood right in front of Yi Qing Luo. He stretched out his hand and stopped Yi Qing Luo's body. Let go. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were icy cold. The red light flashed, and her murderous aura was extremely strong. I've said this before. If you listen to me obediently, nothing will happen to them. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace had not retracted his hand, which was placed in front of Yi Qing Luo. He could tell that there was something wrong with Yi Qing Luo's current condition and body. Perhaps it was out of selfishness. He wanted to hide the fact that there was something wrong with the girl's body. So when he rushed over, he saw Bai Mei raising her whip, striking those companions whom Yi Qing Luo cared about. He snatched the chance to stop Yi Qing Luo, because he was very clear. If he didn't stop them, Yi Qing Luo would definitely strike. This strike, he didn't know if Yi Qing Luo's body could take it or not. Furthermore, Yi Qing Luo's unwell body would also be exposed. It was as if the gods were at work. So he struck out. Now, naturally, he wouldn't let Yi Qing Luo forcefully support her body to save those people who were unimportant to him. In his eyes. Chapter 4195. Yi Qing Luo's eyes drooped as she swept a glance at the hand in front of her. Her eyes were dull, as though there was no trace of emotion. Immediately after, her pink lips curled slightly as she looked at him coldly with a smile, which didn't look like a smile, ridiculing. So, what do you want to do? Tell me your motive directly. The Palace Lord's lips pursed tightly into a straight line. He tightened his fingers as the expression on his face changed slightly. But the hand in front of Yi Qing Luo was not put down. Why? Didn't you want me to listen to you obediently? Then stop beating around the bush. Yi Qing Luo only gave a ridiculing smile as her eyes were cold. You can waste time, but my brothers can't. The Palace Lord still didn't move. I can assure you of their safety. Yi Qing Luo sneered, but I don't believe you. Yi Qing Luo. The Palace Lord's expression sunk, as though he was angered. Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged as her eyes turned chilly. The aura which exploded around her was filled with alienation, which made one unable to get close to her. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace could see it. Yi Qing Luo was angry, because the Palace Lord had kidnapped those brothers whom she cared about. So she was angry, and she was extremely angry, looking at the young lady's anger and the ridicule on her lips. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace found it hard to breathe. Palace Lord, why do you need to talk terms with her? Hall Master Wu Yin saw that the Palace Lord of Abyss Palace's attitude towards Yi Qing Luo was obviously not right, as he immediately spoke out. half probing and half reminding. She's alone now, so as long as these people are still in our hands, we can do whatever we want. Her words had just ended. Then he felt an ice-cold chill coming from the front. Hall head Wu Yin trembled slightly as she met with the palace lord's icy cold eyes. Her heart skipped a beat. Why do you need to butt in on this palace lord's matters? The palace lord's dignified voice was filled with anger. The profound energy was majestic, like a sharp blade. Hall head Wu Yin gave a dull moan as his body flew out. His body fell to the ground and rolled in a circle. She propped herself up on the ground and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked at the palace master of secluded Darkness Palace in horror. No matter how stupid she was, it could also be seen. This palace lord of secluded Gloom Palace's intentions towards Yiqing Luo. For Yiqing Luo, he stopped Miss Bai from taking action against those 10 over people. He even hit young Miss Bai instead. Wasn't this obvious? Taking revenge for Yiqing Luo? Palace Lord, he actually liked Yiqing Luo. Moreover, their relationship was obviously not shallow. Wasn't Yiqing Luo the person whom secluded Darkness Palace wanted to deal with? The third elder was also stunned by the scene before him. She glanced at the palace master of the secluded palace, then at the hall master of the Wuyan Hall. She immediately spoke to ease the atmosphere. She went to the hall master of the Wuyan Hall and helped him up. She said, "The palace master has his own plans for what to do. We just need to follow his orders." Her words didn't get a look from the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. The third elder hurriedly supported the hall master of the Wuyan Hall and retreated to one side. He tugged the hall master of the Wuyan Hall, indicating for her not to open her mouth temporarily. His gaze seemed to be pointing at Bai Mei, who was standing by the side with her half-squinted eyes. Hall head Wu Yin understood his meaning as she fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Looking at that side, the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace was still talking to Yiqing Luo. But after receiving Yiqing Luo's expressionless reply, his expression turned extremely gloomy, but he was still suppressing his anger. Chapter 4196. Bai Mei sensed someone approaching, and her eyes turned icy cold as she shot over. Hall Master Wu Yin clutched his chest in pain. His face was pale as he suppressed his voice. "Miss Bai, do you think Palace Lord he is he?" Saying this, she pursed her lips intentionally as she hesitantly shut her mouth. Bai Mei's gaze turned even colder. Her vision looked towards the two entangled people as her red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful face was distorted to the extreme. Her black robe fluttered without any wind. A thick black fog rolled up. On the other side, no matter how Yiqing Luo opened her mouth, the palace lord of Ethereal Palace had not moved from his spot, preventing Yiqing Luo from saving the 10 over people by the edge of the cliff. Looking at the pale-faced youngsters hanging by the edge, Yiqing Luo finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She suddenly took a step forward as her eyes were filled with an icy coldness. Her bare hands moved. Her fingertips covered the azure dew bracelet under the cover of her palms. She made use of Old Man Song's azure dew bracelet to release a burst of profound energy. Yiqing Luo immediately used the azure dew bracelet to gather the profound energy and turned it into a sharp blade, heading toward the palace lord of Ethereal Palace. She had no intention to be lenient. Her expression was cold and icy cold. The palace lord of Ethereal Palace originally had no intention to dodge. But when he met with Yiqing Luo's vibrant and captivating eyes, he understood if he didn't dodge, this attack would definitely be aimed at his face, and it would come crashing down. There would be no hesitation at all. She had hardened her heart to kill him. His heart at this moment turned cold. The cold wind landed on his face. The palace lord of Ethereal Palace's figure swiftly turned as he avoided the sharp wind blade. Immediately following that, he retreated and blocked the path in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's body rolled, and her soft petite body slid down from Black Tortoise's back as she rolled onto the ground. The ground was filled with dead wood and grass. It was just a light stroke, but a few bright red wounds appeared on her fair and tender skin. She ignored it. She turned over and sat on the ground as she looked at Black Tortoise. Xiangui, bring him back. Xiangui shook his huge head. The snake dragon-like creature on her back stared at her with two pairs of scarlet eyes. Her eyes were filled with worry. Yiqing Luo shook her head at it. I'm fine, you go ahead. Xiangui hesitated for a moment, but still obeyed Yiqing Luo's command and rushed to the edge of the cliff. In the meantime, in the instant when the young girl shot out that profound energy, forcing the palace master of the Netherworld Palace to dodge to the side, his expression changed drastically. His eyes instantly congealed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. No, that's not right. This wasn't Yiqing Luo's presence. The profound energy which attacked him was absolutely not the energy which Yiqing Luo released. Could it be Venerable Sovereign? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he dispelled it. No, this was not the aura of a Venerable Sovereign. Instead, it was an extremely unfamiliar aura that he had never come into contact with before. Who could it be? In his heart, hundreds and thousands of thoughts were running through his head. His gaze suddenly narrowed. When he saw the girl rolling down from the Black Tortoise's back, he felt a chill run down his spine. He subconsciously rushed over and reached out his hand to help the girl up. But he only reached out halfway. He recalled that the young girl didn't like his touch. His hand froze in midair. What made him astonished was Yiqing Luo had no intention to avoid him. Or rather, Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at him coldly, her eyes filled with rejection. Chapter 4197. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace suddenly seemed to have thought of something. His deep and cold pupils suddenly constricted. Perhaps it was to test if his thinking was right or not. He suddenly stretched out both hands and placed it on the young lady's shoulder. Under his palms, the young lady's soft body had obviously stiffened. Following that, her icy cold eyes stared at him emotionlessly. She didn't evade. The Palace Lord's brows creased slightly as his palms slid down once again, directly pressing on the young lady's back. His other hand went around the young lady's waist with a little force. Then he carried the young lady in his arms. It was effortless. The lady in his arms had no intention to evade. Instead, after she was brought into his arms, her body leaned against him softly. The Palace Lord's pupils contracted as his chest started to undulate due to nervousness. Yiqing Luo, have you? He lowered his voice and said the remaining half of the sentence in a very low and deep voice. I lost my profound energy. If it was Yiqing Luo, when she saw those brothers hanging on the edge of the cliff, she would definitely fly over to save them. He didn't want his battle pets to go and bring his brothers up. Furthermore, if it was Yiqing Luo, when he stopped her from saving those youngsters, she would directly make a move. When Yiqing Luo made a move, that burst of energy was definitely not her presence. So, seeing Yiqing Luo rolling down from Black Tortoise's back without any intention to stand up, he suddenly understood. What was the reason for Yiqing Luo's series of actions, which was extremely strange? As expected, the young lady who was forcefully hugged by him turned stiff after she heard what he said. That pair of enchanting eyes that were originally covered with frost was now even more gloomy. Her face was covered with frost. Then, what does the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace want to do to me? Yiqing Luo didn't deny it, as her indifferent tone seemed as though she wasn't talking about her own matters. The Palace Lord's arm suddenly tightened. What kind of person do you think I am? His tone was full of bitterness and some suppressed forbearance. Yiqing Luo only curled her lips in disdain. Haven't the Palace of Darkness always wanted to kill me? No, to put it more accurately, the Palace of Darkness had always wanted to get me. This is a good opportunity. Are you an idiot? The man's suppressed tone revealed a hint of anger. He hung his head. Her overly long black hair spilled down a little and hung on Yiqing Luo's face. He felt a little itchy. Warm air blew towards Yiqing Luo's ears. It was different from DMO Xian's weak and flushed face when they were in close proximity. Her body tensed up even more. It was as if all the hairs on his body were standing on end. Her entire body was filled with rejection of his approach. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace felt even more bitter in his heart as he hugged Yi Qing Luo's hands, almost wanting to rub her into his body. Knowing that you're in danger now, why did you still follow me? The suppressed anger reverberated in her ears. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out loud. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly as she looked at him with a ridiculing smile. You're concerned about me? She was obviously smiling, but the words that came out of her mouth were filled with ridicule. Palace Lord of Abyss Palace, do you know that when you ask this question, it's very sarcastic? She felt that this Palace Lord of Abyss Palace really had a problem with his brain. Chapter 4198. He made it sound as if he really loved her deeply, becoming a whore and still wanting to erect a chastity memorial. She felt that this analogy was very suitable for the secluded palace, right from the start, using the world group's brothers to threaten her. Now, he put on a concerned attitude, berating her angrily why she had to come. Wasn't it contradictory? Wasn't it ironic? Did he treat everyone as fools? Yi Qing Luo, must you misinterpret my meaning? The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace lowered his head as his extremely black eyes stared intently at Yi Qing Luo's face. This was the first time he used this angle to look at Yi Qing Luo. The petite body in his arms was very warm and soft. It was like soft cotton with the fragrance of a young girl. He couldn't bear to let go of her, even though the young lady's body was tensed up and her expression was icy cold. Every single time their eyes met, the young lady's icy cold gaze, as though it could shoot through a person. He totally couldn't feel any of the warmth and sweetness she had when she faced Yi Emotion. But even so, his heart was full of contentment. He had dreamed of this scene countless of times in the deep dark night. Today, his dream had finally come true. He couldn't bear to let go. Even if he incurred the young lady's disgust, he couldn't bear to let go. In his mind, he recalled what his master said to him. Master said, loving someone, isn't it to get her? If you can't get her, then what's the point of this love? Master said, so what if you can't get her heart? To be able to hold her in your arms, to let her accompany you, to let her belong to you alone, isn't that enough? Initially, he couldn't understand his master's words. Now, when he held her in his arms, that satisfied feeling in his heart, he finally understood the true meaning behind his master's words. The expression on his face changed slightly. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's gaze, it revealed some treacherous and chilly greed. This gaze and the sudden change in his aura made Yi Qing Luo's heart tighten. There seemed to be something. Unknowingly, there was a change. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suppressing each other's aura, all of a sudden, a panicked shout could be heard. Zi Qing, Goddess Tong. Hearing the overlapping calls, Yi Zichen frowned. Yi Qing Luo used both hands to push away the Palace Lord's chest as she stuck her head out to look at the edge of the cliff. They saw. Xian Gui quickly rushed to the edge of the cliff and pulled them onto his back one by one. However, just as he pulled Long Yunjian onto his back, an irresistible and chilling attack was directed at Long Yunjian. Then, a black figure leaped into the air. His entire body was enveloped by the mysterious Yin Qi, and it was as if he was about to be devoured completely. The cold chill of the frost spread in the air. Long Yunjian dodged. That power did not stop at all. There was a loud bang sound. The edge of the cliff exploded. The few people who were still hanging on the edge of the cliff quickly fell down. It was extremely fast. Those people were all tied up by ropes. They were unable to concentrate and stabilize their falling bodies. The target of that attack had never been Long Yunjian. Instead, destroy the cliff. Fortunately, Xian Gui reacted quickly. Just as those people were falling, he swiftly bent down and charged towards them. Xian Gui moved. The black figure also followed closely behind. The overbearing dark Yin Qi shot out. Chapter 4199. Group Leader. Seeing that figure falling down, the crowd immediately cried out in panic. It was Long Yunjian. Just as that burst of overbearing, profound Yin Qi landed. Using his last bit of energy, he knocked a few of them aside and was caught by Xian Gui in time. As for himself, he had forcefully endured all of the mysterious Yin Qi. Immediately following that, he lost all his energy and was unable to maintain his figure as he directly fell down. Just at this moment, a figure speedily dashed over. The lady's slender figure, but when she dashed towards Long Yunjian, she hugged him tightly with both her hands. The lady's strength reduced Long Yunjian's falling speed. The lady clenched her teeth as she held on to her last breath, hugging Long Yunjian's totally exhausted body as she used all her strength to kick the cliff wall. Bam! Two entangled figures smashed heavily on the steep wall. The lady was below, and the broken stones on the cliff wall had pierced deeply into her skin, causing numerous blood scars. The man's heavy strength was still pressing down on her body. This worsened the injury on the lady's back. This scene fell into the eyes of those the World Group mercenaries who were carried on Xiangui's back as their hearts clenched tightly. A few cries of shock had already escaped from their mouths uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo turned her head around and looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the scene of Tong Ziqing's lower body, which was already filled with blood. Bai Mei? Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she clenched her teeth and squeezed out these two words. Her gaze was like a sharp blade as it shot towards the black-robed lady who was standing on the other side of the cliff. Her eyes were filled with chilliness, as though it could freeze one into ice. Bai Mei, previously because of a so-called young and beautiful face, she cooperated with the Palace of Darkness. In the end, she almost became the puppet of that human face of the Palace of Darkness. If it wasn't for Bai Su's appearance. At that time, she would have been long dead. Hadn't Bai Su sent her to the balance historian to be locked up? Now she actually ran out again and chose to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness once again, changed to a young and beautiful face again. Was this what it meant to be able to sell anything just for a face? Indeed, she didn't change even in death. Have you forgotten the lesson of the Dark Abyss Palace? Now, she was still causing trouble here and hurting her friend. The girl's eyes were as dark as a deep lake. Vaguely, a few streaks of red light could be seen moving about. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei giggled. Her young and beautiful face gave off an extremely twisted and awkward feeling when she laughed. His facial features seemed to be twisted together. However, Bai Mei was completely unaware of this. She lifted her hand and gently placed her slender fingers on her lower lip. She purposely curled her lips into a charming smile. His smile was filled with thick mockery. Yiqing Luo, do you know why I came back? Her voice was sharp and grating. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting into people's eardrums. Yiqing Luo's gaze was icy cold. Did you think that the promise that secluded Darkness Palace gave you would really be honored? You're just a tool the Dark Palace used to disgust me. So what? Bai Mei totally didn't care about Yiqing Luo's words. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. As long as I can see you go to hell, even if I had to sell my soul, I'd be satisfied. Her smile became even crazier, as though she had experienced some huge stimulation. Chapter 4200. Bai Mei was still laughing. In order to save me, I didn't hesitate to hurt myself to save you. Ha ha, aren't you all silly? That sharp, piercing laughter kept reverberating in the air. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She looked coldly at Bai Mei as her eyes were chilly. For someone like you who has no heart, how would you understand? I'm afraid you've never thought about your sister. Yiqing Luo looked at her with ridicule. Your sister didn't hesitate to plead with Xian to let you live. But you time and time again chose secluded palace to hurt your sister. My sister? Heh, is she even fit to be my sister? Mentioning Bai Su, Bai Mei's anger seemed to have been ignited as her anger surged. That slanderer was merely to torture me. If it wasn't for her. Bai Mei was so angry that her entire body was trembling, intentionally putting on a look of deep sisterly love, just to maintain your own hypocrisy. After she finished howling this sentence, she seemed to have regained her senses. The smile on her face slowly turned chilly. I don't need to understand the so-called feelings you speak of. I only want your life. Her vision shot towards the side, towards the 10 over people on Xiangui's back who were in a sorry state. She wasn't flustered at all because Xiangui had saved those people and lost the props to threaten Yiqing Luo. Just like that, he stood there unhurriedly. When she raised her hand, her black robe fluttered in the wind. In her palm, a black flute had appeared unknowingly. The flute was entirely black without any other colors. When she saw that black flute, Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Surely not, as though to prove her thoughts. Bai Mei placed the flute by her lips. A sharp flute sound entered everyone's ears. The world group's young men and ladies suddenly turned pale as they laid on the ground, crying out in pain. As the flute's rhythm increased, they were in even more pain as their entire bodies started to tremble. Jin Zi, Xiao Yi, Ruo Pan, Xiao Yu. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned red as she shouted out those people's names. But no one was able to give her any response. The sharp flute sound intertwined with her calls. Damn Abyss Palace. To actually use such a sinister move. Ha ha. Did you really think that I would let you rescue her so easily? Bai Mei looked at Yiqing Luo's expression as she laughed contentedly. This was the first time she had seen such an interesting expression on Yiqing Luo's face. What is this? The expression of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. She glared at Bai Mei fiercely. Bai Mei fiddled with the flute in her hand. The smile on her face was no longer as flattering as before. She glanced at the palace master of the Dark Palace playfully and said with a smile, "This is naturally the mission that the Venerable One secretly gave me." Hearing the word venerable, the gloomy face of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. He suppressed his anger. His eyelids drooped slightly as an apologetic expression appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo, this matter. I didn't know about it. I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo's scarlet eyes swept coldly towards him. His gaze was as cold as ice, without a trace of emotion. She gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Her brothers were groaning in pain beside her ears. She said word by word in an icy cold tone, "Is there any meaning if you knew about it or not?" Chapter 42:01. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about how he was feeling. Her pair of icy cold eyes looked at him. "Let go of me." She didn't move. But the pressure in her words made the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace's hands on her loosen up. But he still hugged her as his tone lowered. "You can't help them. If I let go, the matter of you losing your powers will be discovered by Bai Mei." He pursed his lips tightly, and his eyes, which were as deep as a pond, were quiet and serene. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as her smile was cold. Their four eyes met. The young lady's emotionless voice rang coldly. "All these have nothing to do with you." His casual tone and his indifferent attitude, which was so alienated that it did not contain even the slightest bit of emotion. It had already pulled apart the distance between the two of them. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace could tell. The young lady no longer had any feelings towards him. Even those gratitude of him who had once saved her had also vanished into thin air. The current her. She hated him because he was from Seclusion Palace. Her brothers were also captured by him. Various thoughts were surging in his heart. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace knew that from now onwards. He had already been listed in Yiqing Luo's enemy list. This knowledge made the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace's heart feel a dull, piercing pain. "I just don't want you to get hurt." His voice was hoarse and filled with extreme bitterness. As though he had used up all his energy, he used his throat to spit out a voice. "My master doesn't trust me anymore. My original intention was to make use of the world group to bring you to my side. I had never thought of to hurt them, hurt you." He totally didn't know that the world group's 10 over people had already been secretly tampered with. Bai Mei could use the flute to torture them. That flute's aura was sinister and cold, revealing an extremely familiar aura. He totally didn't need to think too much to tell. That was his master's flute. Master had passed the flute to Bai Mei, letting Bai Mei control the world group's members, whereas he totally didn't know about it. This was already very obvious. His feelings towards Yiqing Luo had already made his master no longer trust him. But if he had to do it all over again, his choice would not change. However, he was a little confused. Like her master, a cold-blooded, heartless demon who killed without batting an eye. Why, after knowing that his heart had already been shaken, why would she do something like this? But he still spared his life? He didn't have time to think about this question. The person in his arms had already pressed her palm against his chest. It was so weak, but he could feel that she was pushing him. He could still hear the girl's bone-chilling voice. It doesn't matter if you want to or not. What's done is done. There's nothing to explain. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was startled. Regardless of whether he wanted to or not, he had already done it. That was right. He didn't want to hurt her. But right now, wasn't everything that he was doing hurting her? From the very beginning, the relationship between him and Yi Qing Luo was the opposite. No matter how much he liked her, he would eventually hurt her. There was no place to hide from this. He suddenly broke into laughter. His laughter was filled with bitterness and relief. The hands that encircled her body slowly loosened. He laughed and staggered backward. The smile on his face was sometimes maniacal, sometimes it was light ridicule. His entire temperament had undergone a huge change. It was like he suddenly understood something. Chapter 4202. A gloomy and evil aura surrounded the palace master of Gloomy Palace. He laughed in a low voice. The expression on his face was already an unfathomable one. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's gaze, it was no longer that kind of suppressed, intense feelings. It was dark and gloomy, and at a glance, one would only feel incomparably gloomy. He shuddered. His robes fluttered in the wind. In the blink of an eye, he wore the face of Qiao family's patriarch and was shrouded in a black robe. He put on the black robe that belonged to him once again. He had completely blended into the darkness. The man slowly let go of the girl. His body fell to the ground as if he had no bones. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man in front of her, whose aura had surged but was clearly estranged from her. There wasn't much fluctuation in his eyes. It was just a glance before he quickly retracted his gaze. Then he turned to look at his brothers, who were in agony because of Bai Mei's flute. Only when he looked at them, only when the young girl's eyes remained still, did her emotions change. Her fingers stroked the azure dew bracelet, and she thought to herself, "Old man Song, can you save them?" She had lost her strength, and her body was still weak and powerless. It was impossible to save the World Group brothers. He could only rely on Old Man Song's secret help. "Girl Luo," Old Man Song's tone was a bit heavy. "I'm afraid this won't be easy." Yi Qing Luo was stunned. "What's wrong?" "Old Man Song." If it was before, this old man could still help and use Xian Gui as a smokescreen to save the children of the World Group. But he paused for a moment and asked, "Do you know what the flute in Bai Mei's hand is?" Yi Qing Luo shook her head. Old Man Song sighed. "That's the flute of Darkeen." "Flute of Darkeen?" Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. She could tell. The long flute in Bai Mei's hand was filled with an extremely dense, evil aura. When Bai Mei played the flute, the sinister aura became denser and denser. She roughly knew that this flute was given to Bai Mei by the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows as the last bargaining chip. But from Old Man Song's mouth, he could roughly hear it. This flute was more troublesome than he had imagined. As you can imagine, the Darkeen flute is filled with dense yin qi. Once it is blown, the yin qi can completely bewitch a person's heart. Right now, Bai Mei's heart has been completely blinded by the evil energy. When she uses the Darkeen flute, she can only make those children who have already been implanted with the Darkeen flute feel the agony of the evil energy. Old Man Song explained with a serious tone, if the dark flute of shadows was used by someone else, the effects would definitely not be limited to this. In other words, the mastermind of the Tenyu Palace gave the Darkeen flute to Bai Mei, but did not teach her how to use it. It was just that by using the profound yin qi of the Darkeen flute as a medium, it allowed the profound yin qi to go berserk in the World Group's brothers' bodies, causing their bodies to be unable to withstand such a burden, causing them to be in excruciating pain. If it was someone else, it was very likely that the palace master of the Netherworld Palace had used the mystical yin qi to control the female disciples of the Linglong Palace to kill each other. This was indeed very troublesome. He had to think of a way to purge the profound in-chi from his brother's bodies. If the mystical in-chi stayed in the body for too long, it would be extremely painful. The damage to the human body was extremely serious. She still had to think of a way to snatch the dark in flute away, in case Bai Mei blew the dark in flute again, tormenting the world group's brothers. Chapter 42:03. Old Man Song said, "If I show myself, I'm afraid I'll attract the attention of the people behind Dark Palace." In other words, there was no other way. At the very most, he could only secretly help Yiqing Luo to cast a smokescreen, to cover up the fact that Yiqing Luo had lost her profound energy. Yiqing Luo, what's wrong? Aren't you always arrogant and haughty? Now that you see the brothers you care about lying on the ground in pain, aren't you going to save them? Bai Mei saw Yiqing Luo sitting on the ground with a gloomy expression, and the cold glint that flashed past the corner of her eyes made her shudder. In order to conceal the rising fear in the bottom of his heart, she suppressed the discomfort in her heart and continued, "Look at yourself now. Do you really deserve the title of Mistress of the Emperor Palace?" The girl sat motionlessly on the ground. This caused Bai Mei to feel a little suspicious, and a little fearful in her heart. Yiqing Luo was such a cunning and sinister person. Perhaps this was a deliberate plan of hers. She had crossed hands with Yiqing Luo so many times. Towards Yiqing Luo's habits, he more or less had some understanding. She didn't dare to easily probe what tricks Yiqing Luo was up to. "Bai Mei." Yiqing Luo slowly opened her mouth as her voice sounded inexplicably hoarse. She raised her eyes, and a faint red light flashed through them. This trace of red light caused Bai Mei's heart to tremble. She subconsciously stuttered, "W-H." Yiqing Luo's pink lips twitched slightly as her smile was a little chilly. "In order to send me to hell, you didn't hesitate to sell your own soul. If Xian were to find out that you've escaped from the Balance Historian's side and joined the secluded palace once again, what do you think he would think of you?" Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely calm. The corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking smile, but at the same time, it was just the right amount of light. Bai Mei's pupils constricted. The young and beautiful face was slightly twisted. "How dare you mention His Majesty? Do you really think I'm afraid of you? This scoundrel, if not for her appearance. How could Di Zun leave the two of them?" She could still stand by Di Zun's side, silently holding his heart and secretly loving him. But Yiqing Luo's appearance had disrupted all the rhythm. She had taken the venerable sovereign away. As a result, even Bai Su, her sister, could hardly see Di Zun. She was indeed much older than Di Mo Xian. But so what? She adored Di Mo Xian. For Di Mo Xian, she did not hesitate to change her face. How much effort had she expended to find a suitable, young, and beautiful face? Yiqing Luo, that slut, didn't put in any effort. What right did she have to become the Overlord? He still had the cheek to strut around in front of her. What Yiqing Luo relied on was merely the Overlord's favor. Right now, Di Zun was not by his side. In her hands, she had enough tools to threaten Yiqing Luo. She wanted to see how Yiqing Luo could still be so unyielding. Thinking of this, Bai Mei gradually suppressed the fear in her heart. The fingers that were gripping tightly onto the dark in flute slowly lifted up and shook it slightly in front of Yiqing Luo. After seeing the young girl's slightly sunken expression, Roland's eyes widened. Bai Mei's heart was satisfied and her face was filled with complacency. "Yiqing Luo, don't forget, your brother is still in my hands." Her eyes suddenly flashed past a sharp and thick black. Her figure suddenly pressed down towards Yiqing Luo's direction, accompanied by the strong wind whistling and vibrating sound. Bai Mei's complacent voice was also heard. Chapter 42:04. Yiqing Luo's body instantly froze on the spot, even if she lost her profound energy. With Old Man Song's help, she could avoid Bai Mei's attack. But Bai Mei's words made her feel as though her entire body was frozen into ice, unable to move. Her eyes were filled with an icy cold intent. Bai Mei sneered as she looked at the motionless Yiqing Luo Her gaze turned sinister. An irresistible attack, surging in a strong wind. The strong, profound wave shook everything around Yi Qing Luo. As though in the next moment, Yi Qing Luo was swallowed up. She was dead meat. The smile on Bai Mei's face gradually widened. Suddenly, the surging, profound wave shook in the air. Just as it got close to Yi Qing Luo, as though it was scattered by something. In a split second, it dispersed in midair. Bai Mei's smile froze on her face. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she stared venomously at the fellow who spoiled her plans. She raised her eyes. Bai Mei saw a black-robed figure standing in front of Yi Qing Luo at a moderate pace. The wide sleeves of his robe fluttered in the wind along with the aftershock. Under the strong wind, his tall and slender figure was extremely majestic and domineering. Bai Mei's face trembled as she bit her red lips and spoke unwillingly. "Palace Lord, what do you mean by this?" Right from the start, this palace lord of the secluded palace kept on spoiling their plans. She was willing to lower her stance and talk to him, but it didn't mean that she respected him. After all, he was a palace master in the Palace of Darkness on the surface. She had to give the revered some face. But in her heart, Bai Mei looked down on the palace lord of the secluded palace. If he was really doted on by the revered and was the next successor, how could the revered possibly pass the darking flute to her behind his back? Because of this, after Bai Mei's plans were spoiled numerous times, her questioning tone wasn't as good as before. The man stood in front of the young lady. His expression was cold as that pair of dark eyes under the black robe locked onto Bai Mei. "My man, don't move." His voice was icy cold. Bai Mei's expression congealed. "This is the revered's intention. Palace Master, are you going to disobey the High Lord's orders?" "Master only wants me to bring her back to the Palace of Gloomy Shadows." The Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows answered calmly. "Everything I did was to bring her to the Palace of Darkness." Bai Mei growled unwillingly. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her. "I'm here. You're not needed. You like her." Bai Mei pursed her red lips, and a trace of anger appeared on her face. "The Venerable One doesn't believe you, and we can't believe you either." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace laughed mockingly. "I don't care whether you believe me or not. This person belongs to this Palace Master. If you interfere, this Palace Master will kill you and then apologize to Master." His words were enunciated clearly and enunciated word by word, but his tone was icy cold. Yi Qing Luo totally couldn't tell if he was worried or concerned about her. The man standing in front of her. The change in his aura had already made her feel extremely unfamiliar. It was as if the person in front of him was still the same person, but his heart was different. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Finally, she retracted her gaze and placed it on Bai Mei. Her gaze clashed with Bai Mei. It fell into Bai Mei's eyes. This was Yi Qing Luo using the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace's backing to provoke her. Chapter 42:05. The Palace Master of Gloomy Palace smiled faintly and said, "You can try and see if I'm more important in Master's heart, or if you are more important." Bai Mei was both angry and embarrassed. Her face turned red. Of course, she didn't dare to compete with the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. She was very clear about her position. She was merely a tool used by the people behind the scenes in secluded Darkness Palace because of the grudge between her and Yi Qing Luo. She knew very well how cruel the Venerable One could be. She suppressed her anger, clenched her fists, and spat out each word through gritted teeth. "I hope the Palace Master will live up to the Venerable One's expectations." The Palace of Gloomy Darkness sneered. "You don't have to worry about that." Bai Mei gritted her teeth and moved away. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes slightly and looked at the slender, straight figure in front of her. The expression on his face did not change much. His eyes were calm and emotionless, until the person in front of him turned around. The eyes under the black robe met hers. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly. "Let him go, and I will leave with you." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace didn't say anything. He just stared at her face with his dark eyes. He let out a low chuckle. He smiled. His voice was low and hoarse. Vaguely, it felt somewhat familiar. She furrowed her brows tightly, and there was some kind of emotion in her heart. By the side of her ear, his smiling voice was heard, interrupting her thoughts. Yi Qing Luo, for your gang of brothers, you really can sacrifice anything. His smile seemed to contain some unfathomable meaning. It was like that in the past, and it's still like that now. With so many weaknesses, it'll be very difficult for you to succeed. He slowly squatted down, facing Yi Qing Luo. When he leaned in close to her, using a voice that only the two of them could hear, he said, "You know very well how I feel about you. You also know the other meaning of leaving with me. The current you, the you who has lost your profound strength, no matter what I want to do, you won't be able to resist. For those people, do you really want to go with me?" Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled. It had another meaning between men and women. Naturally, she understood, but you won't. Her tone was very calm, and she did not panic because of the man's words. You trust me that much? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace seemed happy and smiled. Yi Qing Luo looked at him calmly as she slowly shook her head. The people behind the secluded palace will not allow you to do this. Two people on opposing sides. There is no such thing as a credible topic. However, she knew that the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows were desperate to get their hands on her. And she had always been together with Dmo Xian. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had no chance at all. Therefore, that was why the Linglong Palace Hall was acting this way. Unexpectedly, during the time she was in the Linglong Palace, coincidentally, she caught the eye of the blood-bone barbarian king, which led to the death of the Linglong Palace Master. Not only did it implicate Dmo Xian, almost the entire land domain was stirred up because of this. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had lost another chance. Just in time. It was also because of the matter between her and the barbaric Bloodbone King. Even though he had sent Wu Fu to test the waters, the Palace of Gloomy Shadows probably still had some doubts about her. In the end, they might as well make use of the brothers in the world group whom she cared about, to threaten her. How would the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness possibly give the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness the chance and time to take liberties with her? When the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness heard her reply, his laughter grew louder. Chapter 4206. No. Why did they become my prisoners? The Palace Lord pointed at the world group's youngsters and young ladies who were lying on the ground, panting heavily. Yi Qing Luo stared at his face, which was covered by the black robe. Are you trying to tell me your real identity? The Palace Lord laughed so hard that his chest was heaving up and down. Do you want to know? Yi Qing Luo replied without hesitation, yes. The man's laughter stopped abruptly. That pair of serene and dark pupils were like a bottomless whirlpool. After a moment of silence, his body leaned forward slightly. The face covered by the black robe was right in front of her eyes. He laughed softly. This mask will be taken off by you personally. Yi Qing Luo's eyes reflected the man's black robe. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't move. Like this, the two of them maintained this posture for several breaths of time. She opened her mouth, and her voice was calm. I don't have the energy to lift my hand. Take it off yourself. His indifferent tone did not reveal much of his emotions. Such a rejection made the palace master of the Netherworld Palace laugh uncontrollably. He retracted his figure and slowly stood up. What a heartless woman, not even willing to give me a little bit of hope. He raised his hand. His slender, long hand slowly landed on the black robe. Bit by bit, he pulled the black robe away. The black robe fluttered as it landed on the ground, slowly revealing the man's face. Yi Qing Luo's first glance was met with a pair of glazed black eyes. His gentle temperament wasn't unfamiliar to her. His handsome, picturesque face was filled with gentleness and elegance, totally unable to tell that he belonged to the dark side. His gentleness, like a noble prince, was emitted from his bones. Staring at the man in front of her, Yi Qing Luo laughed. It's indeed you. Gu Jingyu. Yes, Gu Jingyu. The man in front of her wasn't a Nirvana Realm, Wind Valley Sect's young matriarch. Gu Jingyu? Previously, because he was in the Imperial Palace, he had overstepped his boundaries. After that, he was imprisoned in the Wind Valley Sect's underground prison. But later on, because of the secluded Darkness Palace, there was a huge battle. Gu Jingyu had disappeared during the Great Battle. At that time, he probably went to the Palace of Darkness as the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace raised her eyebrows and smiled gently. "So, you already guessed it was me?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and touched his face. "Aren't you afraid that this face is another one of my disguises? Previously, I had my suspicions, but I didn't have any evidence." Yi Qing Luo looked at the man in front of her. As compared to the first time they met, he looked totally different. "Your characteristics are ingrained in your bones. This cannot be imitated." From a moment he first saw the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness, his gaze and the look in his eyes gave her a familiar feeling. However, he had never thought that he was someone from the Nirvana realm. Later on, he impersonated DMO Xian, impersonated Patriarch Qiao. That pair of naked eyes, no matter how similar the imitation was, what was in his bones could not be faked. His gentle aura, no one could imitate it. "Ha ha ha. Can I take it that you're praising me? Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace." "No, he should be called Gu Jingyu now." His dark red lips curled up slightly. Yi Qing Luo sneered. "You've really concealed yourself very deeply." Chapter 4207. The Brothers of the World group laid on the ground, totally unable to move. They could only use a vicious gaze as they stared fiercely at Gu Jingyu. "It's you. It's you." Yin Xiao was so infuriated that her eyes turned red. "You're actually the palace mistress of Secluded Palace. Gu Jingyu, you lied to us." The group of them, in order to reunite with Yi Qing Luo in the Earth Realm. Every day, other than eating and sleeping time, they would be cultivating with all their might. Guei Yu and Ghost Robber would change their methods to train them daily. Guei Wu would occasionally give them pointers. Later on, they received news that Yi Qing Luo had met with an accident in the Earth Realm. Everyone became even more anxious. They had finally raised their abilities to the Earth Realm, and Ghost Robber were willing to send them to the Earth Realm to reunite with Yi Qing Luo. But unexpectedly, they had just reached the Earth Realm and met Gu Jingyu. That time in Nirvana Realm. Gu Jingyu and the World Group had met several times. They all understood Gu Jingyu's feelings towards Yi Qing Luo. After all, he was someone who had saved Yi Qing Luo and helped her before. They totally didn't have much vigilance in their hearts. When they heard Gu Jingyu say that he had always been with Yi Qing Luo, he then told them some interesting things that Yi Qing Luo had experienced in the Earth Realm. They instantly believed in Gu Jingyu. Following that, they followed Gu Jingyu to look for Yi Qing Luo. After this search, when they opened their eyes again, they were already tied up and hung on the side of the cliff. By the side were those three ladies. They totally didn't suspect Gu Jingyu at all. The first thing they did was to worry about Gu Jingyu's safety. But no matter how they asked where Gu Jingyu was, while the three ladies were cursing and scolding or torturing them sinisterly, their tone seemed as though they didn't know Gu Jingyu. They had not expected. All of these were Gu Jingyu's scheme. It wasn't that Bai Mei and the others didn't know Gu Jingyu, but Gu Jingyu's identity was the palace mistress of Secluded Palace, the disciple of that revered of Secluded Palace. Facing the World Group's gazes, Gu Jingyu's smile didn't diminish as he was still as gentle as before. "This palace lord isn't considered to be lying to you. After all, you have indeed seen Yi Qing Luo, isn't it?" "Pooey." Yin Xiao gritted her teeth and forced herself to get up from the ground. "If you have the ability, fight with my Jin one-on-one. What kind of man are you to play tricks behind my back?" Xiao Jin, who was holding her hand tightly. "One-on-one. Are you sure it wasn't a one-sided beating by Gu Jingyu?" Yin Xiao looked at Xiao Jin's expression and knew what he was thinking. She angrily flung his hand away. "Look at how useless you are, Xiao Jin." Yin Xiao pursed her lips tightly as her gaze swiftly shot towards Yi Qing Luo and stared at her own man resentfully for failing to meet her expectations, using a voice that could only be heard by the two of them. "Huangfu family successor, can't even defeat a Gu Jingyu? Now, isn't the time for you to conceal your ability? Haven't you noticed that Qing Luo's expression isn't right? Xiao Jin's expression froze. Ha ha ha. Such a pity now. Do you have the ability to stand up for Yi Qing Luo? Gu Jingyu looked towards Bai Mei's direction. Bai Mei moved her fingers, and the flute of dark Yin was placed by her lips. Several sharp flute sounds rang out. The Brothers of the World group instantly groaned in pain. Yin Xiaoyi's expression instantly turned pale. Cold sweat kept seeping out from her forehead. Xiao Jin suppressed his pain as he carried the young lady into his arms, looking at the 10 over people who were groaning in pain on the ground. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand as she tugged onto Gu Jingyu's robe. Chapter 42:08. His ice-sealed eyes met Gu Jingyu's eyes without blinking. Gu Jingyu's eyes drooped as he looked at that fair, slender hand on his arm as his lips curled into an unfathomable smile. He raised his other hand and stopped Bai Mei from blowing the flute. Yiqing Luo's breathing was slightly hurried. Her entire body seemed to be burning with a scorching fire, burning her. Her legs were trembling slightly. She couldn't muster up any energy at all, but the anger surging in her chest supported her will as the hand, which was locked on Gu Jingyu's arm, kept on tightening. Yiqing Luo, Bai Mei's sharp gaze shot over as she sized up Yiqing Luo suspiciously. When his line of sight fell on her legs, he felt a chill down his spine. Bai Mei's eyes lit up. Ha ha ha. I was wondering why you were so strange today. From the looks of it, you've suffered quite a serious injury. She was just saying, why was Yiqing Luo so low profile today? Initially, she thought it was because those people in the world group were controlled by her, so Yiqing Luo had some misgivings. But from the looks of it now, Yiqing Luo apparently couldn't even take care of herself. If one took a closer look, she could totally tell Yiqing Luo's slightly trembling legs and that extremely abnormally pale face. Bai Mei took a look at Gu Jingyu as a vicious glint flashed past her eyes. Palace Lord, since Yiqing Luo is seriously injured, we don't need to discuss any terms with her. Just kill all of them and we'll bring her back. Someone who couldn't even stand properly. Did she still need these threatening tools? With the Palace Lord of secluded darkness around, she probably wouldn't have the chance to make a move on Yiqing Luo. But she could also use another method to torture Yiqing Luo. She could tell that Yiqing Luo cared about her bunch of brothers extremely. Deep feelings and loyalty. Then, in front of Yiqing Luo, she could slowly torture these people to death. Whereas Yiqing Luo didn't even have the ability to save them. To Yiqing Luo, this was the real torture and agony. Why do I need you to tell me what to do? Gu Jingyu frowned and looked at Bai Mei with a cold look. Bai Mei gave a flirtatious smile. I'm only raising a suggestion. Don't tell me. Palace Lord doesn't wish to break all of Yiqing Luo's wings, so that she can only choose to rely on you alone? He had to admit it. It was difficult for Bai Mei to capture the desire in a man's heart. As soon as he said this, Gu Jingyu's heart suddenly moved. Bai Mei covered her mouth and chuckled. Isn't this the best opportunity? When a woman has nothing left, she can only rely on you to live. There was something surging in Gu Jingyu's eyes. The pitch-black vortex expanded bit by bit. Seeing this, Bai Mei's gaze immediately swept towards the two people beside her. She lowered her voice and instructed, "Do it now. You must use the cruelest method to kill those people." Hall Chief Wu Yin and Third Elder looked at each other before looking at Gu Jingyu with some fear. However, Gu Jingyu did not seem to object to Bai Mei's instructions. The two of them tried to test the waters as they walked toward the world group. Yiqing Luo's body moved as she lifted her feet and walked towards that direction. But her arm was held by Gu Jingyu. He used a little strength and pressed Yiqing Luo into his arms. "Let go." Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth as she cried out sharply. Chapter 42:09. Yes, belonged to him alone. This thought kept on enlarging in Gu Jingyu's mind. It almost drove him crazy. His heart was beating uncontrollably for it. He wanted Yiqing Luo. He wanted Yi Qing Luo, no matter what methods he used. As long as he could keep Yi Qing Luo by his side, anything was possible. Gu Jingyu, have you gone mad? Yi Qing Luo sensed that the man who was hugging her tightly had an abnormal change in his emotions. That pair of arms which were clasped on her seemed as though he wanted to knead her into his bones and blood. His entire body was emitting a sinister and terrifying vicious qi, as though he wanted to destroy something, as though he was about to step into hell. His aura spread wildly in all directions. Yi Qing Luo struggled, trying to break free from the man's restraint. But Gu Jingyu seemed to have sunk into some kind of crazy self-consciousness. He couldn't hear her voice at all. He only kept on tightening his arms. Yi Qing Luo was in pain again, and she couldn't muster up any energy. Being pressed into his embrace, she was strangled till she couldn't breathe. Bai Mei saw Yi Qing Luo's situation, and her red lips curled into a complacent, maniacal sneer. Huh? Yi Qing Luo, don't worry. You'll be in even more pain soon. Stop struggling. Save some energy and scream later. Her smile was malevolent, maniacal. He vented the jealousy and resentment that had accumulated in his chest for a long time. On the other side, Hallhead, Wu Yin, and Third Elder had already walked in front of the world group. Xian Gui was like a huge mountain, blocking in front of those young men and young ladies. Jade eyes stared vigilantly at the surroundings, on the complicated patterns on the tortoise shell. That two intertwining things which looked like a snake or a dragon kept on intertwining as it stuck out its scarlet tongue. Both pairs of eyes were emitting a penetrating cold glint. Its huge body blocked Hall, Master Wu Yin, and the Third Elder. On the flat ground, the young men and women were panting heavily, trying to relieve the pain in their bodies from the twisting and twisting of their bodies. They could clearly hear the conversation between Bai Mei and Qing Luo. They wanted to resist, wanted to rebuke, but they didn't even have the energy to move. The minute Bai Mei blew that black flute, inside their bodies, it was like a surging ocean, shaking and surging with turbulent waves. At first, they felt as if there were thousands of thin needles poking into their bodies. It was as if thousands of worms were gnawing away at their bodies. It stung and itched. Then he felt as if he was on fire and as if he was in an ice house. Most painful and unbearable. It was in this asterisk. Their internal organs and bones all seemed to be broken, breaking one by one and then reforming one by one. It was accompanied by a kind of tearing pain. This made them unable to resist at all. Even now, Bai Mei had put down her flute. The pain in his body had yet to subside. Yin Xiao Yi panted heavily as her fingers clenched tightly into the flesh of her palm, gritting her teeth as she spoke out sharply. Qing Luo, we're all right. They can't hurt us. Yi Qing Luo's situation was obviously not right. They absolutely could not become Yi Qing Luo's burden. They could not let Yi Qing Luo sacrifice herself for them again. Xiao Jin looked at the woman's trembling body, her pale lips, and the sweat on her forehead due to the pain and exertion. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Chapter 42:10. Don't try to be brave. His breathing was a little messy. The hand on the lady's waist tightened. The flute is still in Bai Mei's hands. If you act rashly, everyone will be in trouble. Yin Xiao Yi heard that. Her body tensed up. Her fingers tightened. The anger in her eyes intensified. We will not become Qing Luo's burden. While he was saying this sentence, between his eyes, there seemed to be an indistinct, undetectable golden light. It set off that ordinary-looking face. It added a bit of holy and flawless charm to it. Yin Xiao Yi's tightly clenched fingers were pried open by Xiao Jin, stopping her from harming herself. Following that, he held her hand in his palm. The man's warm and safe aura permeated her body and mind. Yin Xiao Yi's angry heart gradually calmed down. She held Xiao Jin's hand. Her voice was soft but sonorous. If anything happens to the needle, don't bother about Huangfu family. I don't want anyone to get into trouble. Xiao Jin's lips curled, his eyes filled with gentleness. I'm the same as you, everyone is the same. Both of their words. The other 10 over people naturally heard what they said. Their chests seemed to be burning with the flames of war. It wasn't easy for them to get the chance to come to the Earth Realm, to meet Yi Qing Luo, to let Yi Qing Luo verify their improvement. How could they be willing to die here like this? They weren't willing to become Bai Mei's tool to threaten Qing Luo, not willing to become Qing Luo's burden, not willing to see everyone in such pain. Final struggle. Bai Mei looked at the huge Xian Gui standing there and sneered, "The two of you just go ahead, I will settle that beast." Saying that, she leaped, attacking towards Xian Gui's direction. Between her fingers, the dark flute, which was emitting a dense evil qi, became her weapon. Xian Gui was proficient in defense. The sturdy tortoise shell, almost indestructible. When Bai Mei's attack came, Xian Gui's entire body shook with jade light. Bai Mei was sent flying backward. Bai Mei sneered, not in a hurry, lowering her eyes, her gaze on the dark flute for a few breaths. Her eyes flashed a trace of ruthlessness. So what if it was one of the ancient four sacred beasts? It had become that slut's war pet. She would kill them without hesitation. The flute spun like a compass at his fingertips. Bang! The green light and the evil yin qi intertwined in the air. Xian Gui's indestructible body was forced to take a step back. The vibrating jade-green light also rippled with layers upon layers of waves. The strong evil aura of the dark yin flute even caused Xian Gui's turtle shell to show signs of cracking. Taking advantage of this moment, Hall Chief Wu Yin and Third Elder flew into the area protected by Xian Gui and went straight for the group of young boys and girls lying on the ground. He bent down and grabbed one of them by the collar and lifted him into the air. The young man's tender face was filled with pain. His face was extremely pale, but because of the sharp pain in his body, he didn't have the strength to struggle. Hall Head Wu Yin dragged the young man and turned around, facing Yi Qing Luo's direction. She could tell. Yi Qing Luo cared a lot about these young men and young ladies, just like how she cared about Wu Fu'er. Since Yi Qing Luo had hurt her Fu'er time and time again, she would let Yi Qing Luo have a taste of this pain. Hall Chief Wu Yan's face became distorted, his eyes filled with viciousness. Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted as she stared deadly at Hall Chief Wu Yan's hand. Chapter 42:11. Burning, scorching, as though a volcano had erupted within her. Her body was extremely tense, as though something was unable to control this oppression and was about to explode. Perhaps Hall Head Wu Yan's strength had increased. The young man groaned in pain as his teeth seeped out. Hall Head Wu Yan gave a sinister smile as he raised his hand. His palm was filled with a thick, profound energy, mixed with a thick, profound yin qi. As though it was played in slow motion, bit by bit, it pressed down towards the young man's head. His mouth was still laughing sinisterly. Yi Qing Luo say, this palm, pressing down from his head. What do you think will happen? It must be very exciting, very exciting. Yi Qing Luo's pupils dilated bit by bit. Her eyes were covered with a bright red glow, as it was fixed on Hall Head Wu Yan's palm, without blinking. The anger in her chest was burning wantonly. Her entire body was trembling. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's expression, Hall Head Wu Yan only felt carefree. Her hand was already on the young man's head. Just a little bit of strength. She could directly crush that head. She gave a sinister smile. Now, you know this feeling? When my Fu'er was bullied by you, I also felt the same way. As she spoke, her expression turned slightly crazy. The young man who was being dragged groaned in pain, but that young, tender face was filled with stubbornness. He raised his head, obviously groaning in pain, but he still forced himself to hold on as his eyes looked towards Yi Qing Luo, saying word by word, say, Madam Qing Luo, don't care about me, save everyone. Every word he spat out was laboriously panting, but the tightness of her throat and that pair of icy, cold, bone-piercing hands covering her head, it made it extremely difficult for her to even breathe. After he finished his words, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He forcefully shut his eyes. His heart was obviously filled with fear, but he still forced himself to hold on, to calm himself down. The young man's stubborn voice, as well as his duty-bound attitude, pierced deeply into the young lady's eyes. Her chest seemed to have a ball of raging fire. Hate herself failed to protect them. They trusted her so much. Trusted. Gu Jingyu, who was hugging Yi Qing Luo tightly, suddenly stiffened. It was as if he had been burned by fire. He immediately let go of the person in his arms and took a few steps back. His gentle eyes stared at the person in front of him in shock, a girl who had lost the support of her strength. His body did not fall to the ground. Instead, he stood there with his back straight. No, not standing. To be more precise, it was floating there. Yes, floating. Yi Qing Luo's body was surrounded by a violent red light. The roots intertwined around the girl. The girl was like a marionette. The strong wind whistled. The girl's red dress flew in the air. It was like a blazing flame, dazzling and eye-catching. Gu Jingyu looked at her blankly. From time to time, he would lower his head and look at the hands that had just embraced the girl. There was still a burning sensation in his palm. What was going on? Didn't she lose her profound energy? Now, what exactly was this surging aura? It was actually so powerful. Could it be it was because Hall Master Wu Yin had acted against her brothers, which agitated her? Yi Qing Luo's movements attracted Hall Master Wu Yin and Third Elder's attention. Both of their expressions changed drastically. After exchanging glances, Chapter 42:12. Gu Jingyu's eyelids twitched, and when he looked at the young lady, his expression changed as he cried out sternly, "Stop! Stop!" Hall Head Wu Yin and Third Elder thought that Gu Jingyu was standing up for Yi Qing Luo again. He didn't even turn his head back. Clenching his teeth, his hands didn't stop as he struck downwards. Gu Jingyu wanted to stop him, but it was too late. His figure swiftly retreated backwards. All the muscles in his body were tensed up due to nervousness. Bam! At the same time, the place where he was standing earlier. No, to be more accurate, it was within the radius of 10 meters where the young lady was standing. An explosion sound pierced through the sky. Between the shock waves, sand and dust rolled. Tyrannical and overbearing energy fluctuation, as though it was going to drown everything in the world. His heart suddenly tightened. Indeed, she was infuriated. Earlier at that instance, he saw the young lady slowly open her eyes, a bewitching red, extremely resplendent. The most shocking thing was, under that red glow, there was a layer of frost. Just one look, and it made Gu Jingyu's entire body turn cold, as he was terrified. Whereas on the other side, Hall Head Wu Yin and Third Elder's actions didn't stop, as though they were using a lightning-fast speed, intending to explode the young man's head in front of Yi Qing Luo. This palm fell down without any obstruction. Excited blood was boiling in his body. Hall Head Wu Yin opened his mouth, sticking out his tongue to lick, preparing to enjoy the pleasure of the blood entering his mouth. In the blink of an eye, a deafening explosion sound was heard by the side of their ears. Following, there was a tyrannical and overbearing energy as it spread in the air. And, at the same time, at the moment when the explosion sound was heard, mixed with a deep and low dragon's roar, the deepest part of her soul was shocked by this dragon's roar. Not waiting for Hall Head Wu Yin and Third Elder's reaction, a bone-piercing hurricane sprinted over. Immediately following that, her body seemed to have been hit by something fiercely. Her entire body instantly felt intense pain. Their bodies were directly sent flying by the attack. Bam! The two of them fell heavily onto the ground. That vicious pressure almost squeezed her internal organs into a ball. Large mouthfuls of blood flowed uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth. Their eyes were filled with shock and terror as they stared in disbelief at the place where they had just been standing. A huge blue giant came into their sight. Dragon. It's a dragon. Hall Leader Wu Yan's voice was hoarse, and his entire body was trembling. The Third Elder was so stunned that he couldn't say a word. His seemingly benevolent face was constantly twisting and changing as his expression changed. Dragon. Yes, this was a gigantic creature that was hovering in the sky, almost covering the entire sky. It was a blue dragon covered in blue dragon scales, as if it was wearing battle armor. They almost widened their eyes. The person who bumped into them just now, it was this dragon. Dragon. Even for them, they had never seen a dragon in the Earth domain for so many years. Where did this dragon come from? It wasn't just Hall leader Wu Yin and the third elder who were shocked. Even Bai Mei was so shocked by the sudden appearance of the dragon that she almost dropped her flute of dark yin. Her delicate body could not stop trembling. He was both excited and agitated. She knew that Yi Qing Luo had a dragon. She was so jealous that she was about to go crazy. This blue dragon absolutely did not look any worse off than Yi Qing Luo's. If she could subdue this blue dragon to be of use to her. Chapter 42:13. Bai Mei had already forgotten. The moment the blue dragon appeared, it directly sent Hall Master Wu Yin and third elder flying. Her stomach was filled with boiling hot blood as her eyes were filled with uncontrollable greed. The sky's shaking dragon roar was still ringing, as though it could move the heaven and earth. That huge blue dragon, the blue dragon body, circled a few rounds in midair. Bit by bit, it slowly landed on the ground. The huge, spiraling body. It surrounded the world groups, young men and women. Because of the blue dragon's appearance, Bai Mei's vision was almost glued onto the blue dragon's body. Xian Gui immediately turned around and stood next to the blue dragon. Third elder stared at that huge dragon's head in a daze. The blue dragon's eyes and that floating dragon whiskers. Their breathing became hurried. Hall Master Wu Yin couldn't help but tremble from excitement. He didn't even care that his internal organs were almost shattered because of the blue dragon's collision. This dragon, where did it come from? Why? Why is there a dragon? It's a dragon, this body shape, it's definitely an adult dragon. This kind of exclamation made Bai Mei's restless heart even more excited. She licked her lips greedily. Her gaze fell onto Gu Jingyu. She tried to get closer as she tried to probe. Palace Lord, Yi Qing Luo also has a dragon. If Palace Lord is able to get this dragon, then you'll be able to go against Yi Qing Luo's dragon. No one didn't want to get a dragon with outstanding ability. Bai Mei made up her mind to take the opportunity when Gu Jingyu went to get that dragon. She would take the opportunity to pick up the scraps from behind, as long as she got this blue dragon. She was a lady who had the blue dragon's protection. Even if the revered wanted her life, he would have to give face to the blue dragon and let her off. By then, she would have an additional layer of protection as compared to Gu Jingyu. However, she was filled with caution and probing. But she didn't get any response from Gu Jingyu. Bai Mei repeated her question again, but she discovered that Gu Jingyu's vision was fixed in one direction, not even blinking for a moment. That direction, not the direction of the blue dragon, as though he totally didn't notice the blue dragon's appearance. The shock and astonishment on his face wasn't directed at the appearance of the blue dragon. Bai Mei followed Gu Jingyu's line of sight and looked in that direction. Suddenly, he felt as if his heart was being squeezed by something. Her eyes widened in horror. The joy and excitement from the blue dragon's appearance were now replaced by shock, because what entered his eyes was a pair of fiery red eyes. Her eyes were as seductive as a fox's and seemed to be burning with raging flames. However, it gave off a chill that rose from the bottom of one's feet to the top of one's head. The coldness of the eyes spread throughout his limbs and bones. Bai Mei had never seen such terrifying eyes. There seemed to be a scream in his throat that wanted to gush out. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make a single sound. It was Yi Qing Luo. That was Yi Qing Luo. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo's entire body was enveloped in a layer of ice-condensed ripples. The profound waves rippled, and if one did not carefully sense it, they would not be able to sense it at all. Bai Mei's eyes widened in disbelief. Just now, her heart was only on the blue dragon, totally neglected Yi Qing Luo's existence. Wasn't Yi Qing Luo seriously injured and didn't even have the energy to move on her own? Why? Why did she still have such a strong, imposing manner? Most importantly, her entire body was emitting such a thick and powerful, profound wave. Except for Gu Jingyu. Chapter 42:14. Bai Mei felt that something was slowly getting out of her control. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the dark Yin flute in her hands. As long as she had the dark Yin flute in her hands, as long as Yiqing Luo still cared about those people in the world group, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not be able to create any waves. Bai Mei kept hinting at herself in her heart, but her heart was beating wildly. There was no way to control it. She pressed on her restless chest as her sinister eyes squinted. No way. She must first contract with that dragon. As long as that blue dragon became her war pet, no matter what Yiqing Luo wanted to do, there was nothing to fear. Bai Mei tightened her fingers as her gaze swept past Yiqing Luo. Following that, her figure moved, and she had already charged towards the direction of the blue dragon. The gazes of the few of them all landed on Lan Long suddenly. They saw a figure descending from the sky. Hall Head Wu Yin and Third Elder were both stunned. When they fixed their eyes, they saw the face of the person who descended from the sky clearly. It was Bai Mei. She speedily neared the blue dragon as she raised her hand and bit hard on her finger. Fresh red blood droplets slowly dripped onto the blue dragon. Hall Head Wu Yin and Third Elder's pupils dilated. A glint of strangeness and greed flashed past their eyes. Almost at the same time, the two of them took action at the same time. Casually grabbing a handful of sand from the ground, they scattered it towards the dripping blood droplets. Just as the blood droplets were about to land on the blue dragon, the sand swirled wildly, like a hot knife through butter. It forcefully blended the dripping blood droplets into the sand. Bai Mei saw that she was about to forcefully contract with the blue dragon, but she was stopped by Hall Head Wu Yin and Third Elder. Her eyes instantly turned red from anger. She stared fiercely at the both of them. Every man for himself. Heaven and earth shall destroy him. Hall Head Wu Yin didn't even bother to take a look at Bai Mei as he speedily flew towards the blue dragon. This blue dragon, I want it. Get lost. This is my war pet. Third Elder's benevolent-looking face was filled with greed. The three of them clashed together. All of them wanted to stop the other party from forcefully contracting the blue dragon. The intense pain caused by the dark Yin flute in the world group, which was encircled by the blue dragon, had already reduced by quite a bit. Their faces were pale as they slowly sat up. They looked at the huge blue dragon in front of them, which had almost formed a wall around them. All of them opened their mouths wide in astonishment. Following Yiqing Luo, they were experienced and knowledgeable. It was not the first time he had seen a dragon, but to get so close to a dragon and be surrounded by its body, this was the first time. Yin Xiao raised her head to look at the huge dragon's head. She stared unblinkingly at the pair of blue eyes and furrowed her brows. Ah Jin, don't you feel that this blue dragon is very familiar? She did not know why, but she just felt that this blue dragon was very close to him. She could not sense any hostility from the blue dragon. Xiao Jin held her shoulders lightly, his gaze sizing up the blue dragon, and nodded, saying, "It seems to be protecting us." They were trapped in the dragon's body, not to stop them from escaping. Instead, it protected them within its range of protection. Xiao, a weak voice was heard. An Ai Ra Pan also sat up straight, her face extremely pale. "Group leader, we have to save group leader." Just now Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing were thrown down the cliff. Chapter 42:15. Yin Xiao went over to support the swaying Ai Ra Pan as her vision looked towards the edge of the cliff, which was on the verge of collapse. Quite a number of them heard Ai Ra Pan's words. They all raised their heads as their faces were filled with worry. Group leader is so incredible. He won't let anything happen to him. Yin Xiao smiled. Jean and I'll go down and look for group leader, and Ziqing, you guys take care. With the blue dragon's protection, Yin Xiao heaved a sigh of relief. Bai Mei and those two middle-aged women started killing each other for the blue dragon's ownership. As long as they controlled Bai Mei not to blow the flute in her hands, they didn't need to worry. After they got Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing back, they only needed to think of a way to expel the impurities in their bodies which were controlled by Bai Mei. They wouldn't become Yi Qing Luo's burden. The both of you be careful. I will protect everyone. Lu Xiaoyi stood out. Yin Xiao, Yi, and Xiao Jin were about to fly up and jump out of the blue dragon's protection circle. The blue dragon's body suddenly moved. The trembling hurricane made the both of their actions halted. The next moment, they saw a figure sliding down from the blue dragon scales. Yin Xiao, Yi subconsciously rushed forward and steadily caught the person who was falling straight down. The soft, petite body was filled with a thick stench of blood. When Yin Xiao, Yi saw the person in her arms, her expression changed immediately. Zi Qing, the person who slid down from the dragon's scales, wasn't it? Tong Zi Qing, who used her own body to slow down the speed of falling to save Long Yinzhan? Where's group leader? Where is he? Yin Xiaoyi hugged Tong Zi Qing tightly as her gaze swiftly shifted onto the blue dragon, looking around. The blue dragon had brought Tong Zi Qing up from the bottom of the cliff. It should have saved Long Yunjian too. But no matter how they searched, they didn't see Long Yunjian's figure on the blue dragon's back. Yin Xiao carefully placed Tong Zi Qing, who was covered in blood, on the ground. Enai Ruo Pan and Lu Xiaoyu immediately went up to support her, using their knees as a pillow for Tong Zi Qing. Beiming Lulu immediately took out a medicine box from her space pocket and bandaged Tong Zi Qing's wounds. Why don't I see group leader? Yin Xiaoyi's brows creased even tighter as she looked at Xiao Jin in puzzlement. Xiao Jin's expression was solemn. I'll go over to take a look. He was just about to leave. The blue dragon blocked his path again. A huge dragon head stretched out, and a dragon's breath sprayed down. A low dragon roar came from its mouth. Xiao Jin paused and glanced sideways at Yin Xiao. He seems to be stopping us? Yin Xiao pursed her lips. She felt it too. Every time she and Xiao Jin wanted to go down the cliff to look for Long Yunjian and Tong Ziqing, Blue Dragon would stop them. What was going on? This dragon roar. The blue dragon pressed even lower. However, the prestige of the dragon race was still there. A dragon's breath. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. The three of them who were fighting immediately looked at Blue Dragon. Seeing how Lan Long and the world group's attitude was so intimate, Bai Mei's face immediately sunk, and with a backhand palm, the two middle-aged women in front of her flew out. Two idiots. Don't let those people take advantage of us. Bai Mei gritted her teeth and shouted angrily at the two of them. Then, she quickly flew towards the blue dragon. Hall leader Wu Yin and the third elder's faces also darkened slightly. But looking at how intimate the blue dragon was with those little brats, they could only bear with the greed in their hearts. Don't let them kill each other here. Instead, let those little brats contract the blue dragon. Chapter 42:16. Bai Mei's speed was extremely fast. After locking onto the blue dragon, Hall head, Wu Yin, and third elder didn't stop her. Her finger, which was still stained with blood, it directly pressed onto the blue dragon's body. The moment her blood came into contact with the dragon's scales, Bai Mei's eyes shone with ecstasy. Success. Success. She was going to become a cultivator who owned a dragon as a war pet. She was going to obtain this dragon and make it her slave and her own weapon. In the future, she wouldn't have to lower herself anymore. The more Bai Mei thought about it, the more excited she was. But in the next instant, the smile on her face froze. The blue dragon, which was stained with her blood, casually shook its huge body. That smear of blood instantly dissipated. It didn't affect the blue dragon at all. Bai Mei opened her mouth wide in shock, unable to believe her own eyes. A powerful beast like the Dragon Clan. As long as her blood dripped onto the dragon's body, it would more or less affect the dragon's emotions. She could even use the blood to fuse with the dragon and form a telepathic link with the dragon. As long as she could convince this dragon, let accept her willingly, this dragon would become her slave. But why this dragon was completely unaffected? She couldn't even form a telepathic link with that dragon. Bai Mei gritted her teeth. Unwilling and unable to give up, she stretched out her hand once again and pressed onto the blue dragon's body. This time, the blue dragon was long prepared. When Bai Mei was about to get close, the blue dragon's tail swung and smashed heavily onto her back. The force of the blow caused by May's throat to gush out a large mouthful of blood. Her entire face turned deathly pale from the pain. Bai Mei rolled on the ground and immediately rolled out of the blue dragon's aura range before she stood up. The moment she moved, an intense pain came from her chest. She pressed on her chest forcefully and gritted her teeth as she raised her head and stared angrily at the huge creature. She couldn't form a contract. She couldn't form a contract with this blue dragon. Could it be that this blue dragon already had an owner? It refused her to get close. But it took the initiative to get close to the bunch of trash in the world group. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it was circling around the bunch of trash in the world group. Was he protecting them in an absolute manner? That dragon, surely it couldn't be, belonged to Yi Qing Luo, right? Yi Qing Luo. That's right, Yi Qing Luo. Bai Mei immediately turned to look at the young girl who was still standing at the same spot with her eyes wide open and an imposing aura emanating from her body. No matter how strong the flames around him were, the girl didn't move at all. Even if that pair of treacherous and enchanting red eyes were open, he didn't even blink. Bai Mei's brows twitched. A strange feeling welled up in her heart. Her eyes flashed, and she suppressed the oppressive feeling brought by the young girl's aura. She looked straight at the young girl. There was something wrong with Yi Qing Luo. It was as though he had lost his sense of self. Bai Mei pursed her lips tightly. After staring at Yi Qing Luo for several breaths, there was no more hesitation. His figure moved, and his figure had already neared Yi Qing Luo. The surging, profound waves were like sharp blades. The piercingly cold, dark light constantly shook the air. When Bai Mei approached, she felt an endless pressure corroding her body and mind. She forcefully endured it as the corners of her lips curled upwards. Her young and beautiful face revealed a sinister expression. Immediately after, both her hands directly locked onto the young girl's shoulders. Bai Mei. Gu Jingyu's vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 42:17. Gu Jingyu also moved his body, but his speed was after all a little too slow. Bai Mei had already locked Yi Qing Luo as her 5 fingers sealed Yi Qing Luo's neck. Stop! Gu Jingyu stood by Bai Mei's side as he stretched out his hand to stop her. Bai Mei didn't evade as her lips curled into a cold smile. Palace Lord, if you move, I'll strangle her to death right now. As she said that, her 5 fingers tightened. The young lady's unblinking red eyes started to fluctuate. Her expressionless face turned slightly pale. She didn't struggle, but apparently, she was affected by Bai Mei's strength. Gu Jingyu's hand, which was stretched out in midair, froze. His face was filled with anger. Bai Mei wasn't affected by the threat, as she held onto Yi Qing Luo tightly, as she took quick steps towards the direction of the blue dragon. The moment she clamped down on the young lady, those youngsters in the world group who were encircled by the blue dragon all felt their hearts being lifted up. Their faces were filled with worry for Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, they saw Bai Mei dragging Yi Qing Luo as she headed towards their direction. All of them stood up, wanting to catch Yi Qing Luo. But Bai Mei only held onto Yi Qing Luo as the flute in her hand was pressed against Yi Qing Luo's neck. Suddenly, a huge dragon head drooped down as it met her eyes. The dragon's breath was whistling, and that pair of bronze bell-like huge dragon eyes seemed to be even bigger than Bai Mei's head. It was threatening her to let go of Yi Qing Luo. Receiving this hint, Bai Mei smiled instead. Contract with me, and I will let go of Yi Qing Luo. Indeed, the appearance of this dragon was related to Yi Qing Luo. She took the opportunity when Yi Qing Luo had no way to resist to make use of her to threaten the blue dragon. If the blue dragon cared about Yi Qing Luo, she would be able to subdue this dragon. If the blue dragon didn't care about Yi Qing Luo, she would kill Yi Qing Luo, and it would be considered as ending her old enemy. No matter which point, she wouldn't lose out. Bai Mei, you're despicable and shameless. Yin Xiao Yi was so infuriated when she heard this. Just based on you, and you want to contract the blue dragon? Pooey. Bai Mei was scolded, but she didn't get angry. I advise you, you'd better help me and persuade that dragon. If I can't contract with it, at most, let Yi Qing Luo accompany me in death. I have nothing to worry about, so if I die then, so be it. But Yi Qing Luo is different. If she dies, you bunch of brothers who value relationships and righteousness will be heartbroken. Blue Dragon's azure eyes were filled with anger and annoyance towards Bai Mei. A powerful dragon breath gushed out of its nostrils and slammed into Bai Mei's face. Bai Mei sneered as she stabbed her flute fiercely towards Yi Qing Luo's neck. The darking flute, which was encircled with evil qi, was like a sharp blade, piercing through Yi Qing Luo's skin. Blood gushed out from her neck. I don't want to waste my breath on you. Either she dies, or you make a contract with me. Bai Mei shouted. Her face was filled with a maniacal sneer. The strength of his hand was also extremely tight. However, her nervousness was hidden in the depths of her eyes. The blood that gushed out caused the blue dragon's eyes to flicker. Its head also retreated a little. It saw that this blue dragon indeed cared about Yi Qing Luo. Bai Mei continued, after the contract, I will let her go, as well as everyone else here. Only a ghost would believe your words. Yin Xiao spat fiercely as she shouted, Blue Dragon, you absolutely cannot believe her. She dares to hurt Qing Luo. When the Overlord rushes over, she will suffer more than death. Bai Mei's hand trembled slightly. Chapter 42:18. Bai Mei gritted her teeth as she looked at the young lady who was still frozen stiff and motionless. Her eyes squinted slightly. Now that things had come to this, there was no room for her to retreat anymore. These people, this dragon, would not give her any way out. She sneered as her face was filled with madness. Before the Overlord rushes over, I will kill her. Even if I want to go to hell, I will drag her down with me. As she said that, she moved the flute closer to Yi Qing Luo's neck. Under the furious gazes of the crowd who didn't dare to act rashly, Bai Mei took out her bitten hand and passed it over to the blue dragon. I don't want to waste time with you. Make your own choice. Do you want to become my slave and respect me? Or do you want to give up? Yi Qing Luo? The azure blue dragon's eyes were glistening with a dark whirlpool. The dragon's whiskers floated, showing its anger. I will count to 3. If you are still unable to decide, I will decide for you. Bai Mei had no intention to drag the time. If she waited till the Overlord sensed something amiss and rushed over, not only would she not be able to kill Yi Qing Luo, she would have to die here. 1. The dragon's breath sprayed as energy fluctuated. 2. The whirlwind turned into a whirlpool. The entire sky seemed to be dyed by a patch of black ink. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. That was the blue dragon's majesty. Bai Mei was expressionless as she maintained her posture and slowly spat out the last number, 3. When the third number was spat out, the blue dragon's breath was extremely coarse and heavy. Its huge body shook slightly. The ground also shook and cracked, setting off endless sand and dust. The huge dragon's body tightened bit by bit. The strong hurricane blew against Bai Mei's face, as though a knife was cutting her skin. Bai Mei suppressed the fear as her legs turned into jelly as she clenched her teeth and looked towards that azure blue dragon's eyes. The hand holding the dark yin flute slowly moved from Yi Qing Luo's neck to her chest, stopping at the position of her heart. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. Her eyes were filled with madness, as though she had lost her rationality. No one dared to move easily. He didn't dare to use Yi Qing Luo's life as a bet. Each and every one of them was on guard as they glared threateningly at Bai Mei. After seeing Bai Mei's actions, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The blue dragon let out a low roar. The dragon's eyes fell on Bai Mei's raised hand. Then it slowly lowered its head and approached the hand. Blue dragon, you really want to form a contract with her? When Yin Xiao saw Blue Dragon's actions, she was so shocked that she almost jumped up. If you become her war pet, she will request you to kill all of us. People like Bai Mei. Once she was given a chance to turn things around, he would definitely strut around and stand on your head. Blue Dragon's movements paused slightly. His azure blue eyes flickered with a strange light. But very soon, it restrained the thoughts in its eyes. Little by little, he approached Bai Mei. looking at the approaching blue dragon. Bai Mei's face was filled with excitement and a proud smile. He was so excited that the blood in his body was boiling. The corners of his lips couldn't help but widen into the biggest arc. When the blue dragon was just a little bit away from her blood-stained hand, the blue dragon suddenly stopped. She couldn't wait. Chapter 42:19. Bang! Something seemed to explode in the air. A scream broke through the sky. Then the entire space was filled with majestic and terrifying waves. Bang! Another sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. A figure fell heavily to the ground. The sand on the ground shook and smoke rolled. The person who fell to the ground twitched a few times on the ground, then stopped moving. Roar, a violent dragon roar, was deafening. The sound waves formed rippled in the surroundings. The huge dragon body suddenly flew up into the sky. The dragon's body coiled and twisted in circles. The blue dragon scales were like indestructible armor. The huge dragon head was raised high up in the sky. The dragon's might was unstoppable. Miss Bai! Miss Bai! Two exclamations were heard. Hall Master Wu Yin and the third elder had rushed to the direction covered by the smoke and dust. There, Bai Mei was bending her body in pain, and there was a large pool of blood under her body. Their expressions changed slightly, and the hands that were stretched out to support Bai Mei stopped. What was going on? Didn't the blue dragon willingly and obediently contract with Bai Mei? Why did it suddenly? What was going on? Not only the two of them were stunned. Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded. Only the man in a bamboo-colored brocade robe, standing not far away, with a gentle face and a serious expression, had a look of understanding in his eyes. He wasn't surprised at all, as if he had already expected this outcome. He raised his head slightly. His gentle black eyes looked at the sky, at the body of the blue dragon that was coiled up. He squinted his eyes slightly. He could vaguely see, on the blue dragon, there was a slender figure standing against the wind. The flames were like fire, extremely flirtatious. Suddenly, he chuckled softly. Indeed, no matter when, no matter how dangerous the situation was, as long as it was her, she could always turn things around again. She always had the ability to trigger miracles. She was obviously already at a disadvantage. He only needed to take the last step to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness. A good hand of cards, but he was beaten to a pulp. In Gu Jingyu's eyes, it was hard to tell whether he was smiling or helpless. He was very clear. Now, he had already lost the initiative. He had also lost control of Yi Qing Luo. Today's plan was destined to fail. His eyes stared deeply at the blue dragon for a while. Then, he turned around and quietly disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on Bai Mei, who had been sent flying. Moreover, he didn't notice that a person had already disappeared from the battlefield. Bai Mei collapsed to the ground. Even now, he still couldn't believe how he had been sent flying. Obviously, she had already reached her hand into the blue dragon's mouth. He was about to feed it his own blood. He could already form a contract with the blue dragon. But why did it become like this? Bai Mei widened her eyes. The young and beautiful face was slightly distorted. Her clothes were stained with fresh blood, and her face was also stained with blood, making her look extremely miserable. She looked at the blue dragon that had distanced itself from her unwillingly. That was her battle pet. Suddenly, Bai Mei's eyes blinked. His face was filled with astonishment. Following that, he blinked fiercely as his eyes stared a certain direction without blinking. After that, as though he had confirmed something, his face twisted and his eyes were filled with venomous hatred. Yi Qing Luo. It's you, it's you. Her body was trembling from agitation. Chapter 42:20. When the dust dissipated, the figure standing on top of the blue dragon appeared clearly in front of everyone's eyes. Like a fiery red robe, a devastatingly beautiful face. Her lips curled into an unbridled cold smile. Wasn't it Yi Qing Luo? It's her. How could it be her? Bai Mei's chest was filled with raging fury and disbelief. Yi Qing Luo had obviously lost her strength. Yi Qing Luo was obviously at her mercy earlier, unable to resist. Could it be that all of this was actually an act by her, just to tease her? Bai Mei's mind was in a mess. Her malevolent face twisted as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws, trying to climb up and strangle Yiqing Luo to death. But the moment she moved, her entire body emitted a heart-wrenching pain, as though her bones were being smashed one by one. "How dare you snatch my partner?" The young lady's icy cold voice was filled with endless chill. Indistinctly, it was mixed with anger. She looked down at Bai Mei from above. Her icy cold, imposing manner pressured the surrounding air, as though it had solidified. "Using me to threaten him. Who gave you the guts to do so?" Bai Mei's breathing congealed as her ears were filled with the young lady's icy cold words. This angle coincidentally met with Yiqing Luo's line of sight. She could clearly see that young lady's pair of flirtatious red eyes, blood-colored eyes. The corners of her eyes rose, outlining a wavy flower tail. Amidst the flow of light, the red light flickered, resplendent and eye-catching. This kind of direct stare without any concealment. As compared to earlier, when she met with Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was even, making Bai Mei's heart tightened into a ball. Bai Mei's body shrank as her eyes swept around in terror, trying to find Gu Jingyu's figure to seek help. But her gaze surveyed the surroundings. But she didn't see Gu Jingyu's figure at all. Hall Head Weiyan and Third Elder stood by the side, looking at her with an extremely complicated expression. Bai Mei was infuriated as her face flushed an abnormal shade of red, as blood continued to rush to her head. "Help me up! Help me up immediately!" Hall Head Weiyan and Third Elder looked at each other in dismay, but no one moved. Bai Mei clenched her fists tightly as her entire body was trembling. "The both of you. Do you want to die? Don't think that I can't take the lives of the two of you in my current state." She clenched her teeth, enduring the pain in her body and the tearing pain, and sat up straight. He was in a sorry state. The blood was viscous. Her nose was filled with the thick smell of blood. She held it in with great difficulty, her voice extremely tense. "That dragon has already been stained with my blood. Forming a contract with it is only a matter of time. That belongs to me. Mine." Bai Mei lifted the hand that she had forcefully stuffed into the blue dragon's mouth. Then, the flute of dark Een slid across his arm. The bite wound was enlarged a little. Warm and viscous blood gushed out quickly. Bai Mei's face was contorted. She gently placed the flute of Umbra on the wound. Lowering her head, her trembling lips pressed against the flute of darkness. Everyone in the world group subconsciously held their breaths as they stared at Bai Mei with vigilance and pain. They were restless and wanted to snatch the flute of Darkeen. However, when the sound of the flute rang out, everyone was in a daze. The heart-wrenching pain that they had imagined did not engulf their bodies and minds. The woman who was playing the flute continued to play. The dense, evil Een Chi slowly fused with the blood on her wound. The reason why Bai Mei played the flute of Darkeen was not to torture them, but Chapter 42:21. Oh no, lass. Old Man Song's anxious voice suddenly rang in Yiqing Luo's mind. Bai Mei intends to use the dark Een flute's power to pollute this human dragon's heart. She wants to force a contract with the human dragon. Yiqing Luo's eyes were fixed on Bai Mei's actions. A dense, evil energy that was visible to the naked eye was constantly attacking Bai Mei's wound. Bai Mei's hand trembled even more. Even his forehead was dripping with sweat. Apparently, when she used the evil chi, she didn't feel any better, but she didn't hesitate, nor did she hesitate. She continued to play the flute. "Lass, you must stop Bai Mei's actions immediately." Old Man Song continued. "Earlier, the human dragon indeed came into contact with Bai Mei's blood. This has some influence on the human dragon. If Bai Mei uses the dark Een flute to pollute the human dragon, there is a possibility she can use the dark Een flute to control the human dragon to contract with her." Listening to Old Man Song's words, Yiqing Luo frowned. She took a look at Bai Mei. Then he looked down at the blue dragon below him, whose body was continuously coiled up and turning. He could feel that. Right now, he was already somewhat affected by it. Yiqing Luo squatted down and placed one hand on the blue dragon's horn as she lowered her voice. "Jean, Stay awake. Don't fall into Bai Mei's trap. Hearing her voice, the blue dragon's eyes blinked. His azure blue eyes seemed to be sparkling with water. The dragon's breath spurted and his beard fluttered. Yiqing Luo continued, I'll stop her. You're just staying with a little bit of her blood. I will try my best to erase the connection between you two. She paused as her red eyes revealed some determination. What you need to do is to stabilize your rationality. Stay awake and wait for me. Ayo! The blue dragon let out a low growl. It was filled with majesty, and one could tell that it was suppressing a huge amount of pain. Yiqing Luo's vision turned. The red eyes were fixed on Bai Mei. She didn't hesitate. She leaped. The slender figure turned into a red shadow as it swept across the horizon. But in the blink of an eye, she was already standing in front of Bai Mei. Immediately, she raised her hand. The flame beast suddenly spread out. The majestic dark force blasted directly at Bai Mei. It was that simple and crude. Bang! There was a loud noise. When the dark force fell, Bai Mei blew the flute as she raised her eyes to take a look at Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei had no intention of moving. There was almost no suspense in this attack. Her entire body exploded, but in the blink of an eye, the blue dragon that was entrenched in the sky suddenly let out a low dragon roar. The massive dragon body seemed to have lost control as it surged forward and charged at Lin Fan. The dragon swayed its body. The dragon's tail flew. The blue dragon's scales shone with an indestructible light. All of it had taken on all of Yiqing Luo's profound energy earlier. Jean. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted abruptly as she swiftly kept her glower flame fan. Roar! The blue dragon raised his head, and his voice sounded a little suppressed. The dragon's body began to twist uncontrollably again. It was as if he was fighting against something. Yiqing Luo's expression instantly turned gloomy. He glared fiercely at Bai Mei. Generally speaking, humans wanted to contract with the beast race. Not only could they use their own blood to form a contract, blood was only used to build a bridge of communication between the two. Just like earlier, Bai Mei dripped her blood on the blue dragon. Chapter 42:22. But not only did Bai Mei drip a drop of blood on the blue dragon, following that, she dripped some of her own blood into the blue dragon's mouth, borrowing the power of the dark Yin flute. Even the dragon clan would be affected by this. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned slightly cold as a chilly intent flashed past. From the looks of it, she could only start from Bai Mei, restrain Bai Mei, and snatch the dark Yin flute. Then Bai Mei would lose her backing. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she sized Bai Mei up with a piercingly cold glare. Now, Bai Mei was riddled with injuries and had lost too much blood. It wasn't difficult to subdue such a broken body, but Bai Mei could make use of the dark Yin flute to let the blue dragon block in front of her. If she were to strike too heavily, perhaps it would be the same as what happened earlier. The one who was injured might be the blue dragon. This was a little difficult. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly as she pondered on what she should do. Suddenly, that huge dragon, which was blocking in front of Bai Mei, let out a sharp roar. Following that, with an irresistible force, it charged towards Yiqing Luo's face. The oncoming hurricane whizzed past his ears. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Towards the blue dragon's sudden action, she wasn't able to react in time. In her heart, she didn't feel that he would hurt her. The blue dragon's huge head stopped in front of Yiqing Luo. Just one of his dragon heads was already the size of her. The azure blue dragon's eyes met hers without blinking. Between the ripples, that pair of dragons' eyes seemed to be transmitting some kind of message to her. But there was no time to think about it. The blue dragon's entrenched body suddenly started spiraling rapidly. Yiqing Luo felt a warmth between her brows. Following that, there was something trying to drill into her brows. A gush of warmth spread from her brows into her body, enveloping her entire body. Inside his chest, the blood that would occasionally boil and the profound energy that attempted to rush out under this warmth gradually subsided. Some kind of energy slowly seeped into her limbs. Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes fanned. Her eyes stared blankly at the blue dragon, whose head was aligned with her forehead. The blue dragon's body floated in front of her. She seemed to have understood something. His expression changed slightly. "Ajahn, you can't be." The words were left unsaid. His profound heart, Jade instantly felt a scorching, hot sensation. It also carried a majestic power that shook her body. Hum! There was a buzzing sound in his mind. Her vision suddenly blurred. A short period of dizziness caused her delicate body to sway slightly, causing her to lose her balance. Swish! Another piercing sound rang out. Ripples of red and blue intertwined, profound waves spread out in the surrounding air. A warm current washed through every corner of his body. Yiqing Luo could vaguely feel that something was stirring. It was as if he had caught something, but it was also a little blurry. She didn't know. What do you look like in front of everyone right now? The girl stood there steadily. His blazing red robe billowed in the strong wind, like an excited flame. 3,000 black hairs danced wildly in the wind. Like silk, it poured down in torrents. But in front of her, that huge dragon's body was at the same level as her head. The blue profound light intertwined with the red glow released by the young girl. It looked elegant and holy. Ordinary people could not blaspheme it. No, damn it. You can't contract it. It's mine, it's mine. Chapter 42:23. Roar. The majestic dragon's roar pierced through the heavens and earth. The dark clouds in the sky were pushed aside bit by bit. The land regained its brightness. The dragon scales on the blue dragon's body glowed brilliantly as it flowed continuously. Yiqing Luo felt a soft touch as it brushed past her hand. Immediately after, there was an invisible force that linked her and the blue dragon together. Her chest seemed to be surging with a tidal wave of energy. The warm current spread, and the majestic energy scoured every single meridian in her body. Her limbs and bones were flowing endlessly. The scorching, profound jade heart was flickering with a flickering red glow. Ajahn! Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved slightly as she softly spat out 2 words. Her body trembled again. Boundless energy waves surged into her body in a frenzy. Boom! There was a sudden jolt in his brain. Invisible, profound waves spread out from Yiqing Luo's body. Her eyes suddenly opened wide. The alluring red glow was like a sharp blade as it shot out. Her hands clenched into fists as the profound waves were released one after another. Virtuous, profound, 5th grade. She had advanced. Thick and majestic, profound energy vibrated in the surroundings. Bai Mei looked at this scene as she looked at the young lady's profound great energy. The waves of profound waves spread out, stirring up a hurricane. Her entire face was distorted. Yiqing Luo. When she saw the blue dragon, she had wholeheartedly thought that the appearance of the blue dragon was the turning point in her life. This blue dragon already belonged to her, but that blue dragon actually took the initiative to choose Yiqing Luo, initiating the contract with her. That damn slut. It's her. It's her. Snatched away the blue dragon, which belonged to her. Bai Mei. Hatred surged in her heart. However, there was nowhere for him to vent his anger. Bai Mei's entire body was trembling. She glanced at those young men and women who were standing unsteadily not too far away. The cold glint in her eyes flashed past. Her hands unconsciously curled up a little. Earlier, when Yiqing Luo stopped her from using the Dark-Een flute to control the blue dragon, she didn't even have the energy to lift up the Dark-Een flute and play it. Otherwise, as long as he had the flute of Dark-Een, she could totally make use of the world group's people to threaten Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei's fingers struggled to move. However, he felt a stabbing pain all over his body and an intense pain of his internal organs being torn apart. She was so stunned that she couldn't muster up any strength. The girl stood on top of the blue dragon. After her advancement, her aura had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. That otherworldly face of hers was even more stunning. She was so high up, looking down at everything below. Bai Mei felt that in Yiqing Luo's eyes, she was like an ant which could be easily pinched to death. This knowledge caused the hatred in by May's heart to deepen. The tense atmosphere made Hall Chief Wu Yin and the third elder's hearts beat faster. They looked at each other. She also realized that Bai Mei wasn't Yi Qing Luo's match. Even if Yi Qing Luo was seriously injured previously and had no strength to move. But he had contracted a blue dragon. Not only that, but it had also advanced a grade. What could Bai Mei use to compete with Yi Qing Luo? Thinking of this, the two of them immediately thought of a way out. Come here. Come here. Suddenly, Bai Mei's weak voice was heard from the side. Hall Chief Wu Yin looked at the person who was lying on the ground, unable to climb up as his brows creased. Chapter 42:24. That roar. It shook her until her throat was dry as she started coughing violently. That pale face was flushed with an abnormal shade of red because of the coughing. She looked extremely disheveled. Hall Head Wu Yin sneered. Bai Mei, you're a defeated opponent of Yi Qing Luo. What are you trying to do? Now you're the one begging us. This provocation made Bai Mei's face turn steely green. Her breathing became hurried. Her venomous eyes stared fiercely at Hall Head Wu Yin as her mouth opened and closed as she gritted her teeth. Do you think that if I die, you'll be able to escape? Hall Head Wu Yan's expression turned stiff. Back at Linglong Palace, she and Yi Qing Luo had already formed an enmity. Now, she followed Secluded Palace to scheme against Yi Qing Luo. How could Yi Qing Luo possibly let her off? She couldn't die. She had to return alive to save Fu Er. Third Elder's face turned slightly pale. She had already cooperated with Secluded Palace. Linglong Palace was already under Mo Xian's control, so there was no way for her to return. Now, she could only rely on Secluded Palace to get what she wanted, and the only medium to contact Secluded Palace was Bai Mei. They had no other way out. The two of them exchanged glances and finally walked towards Bai Mei. Their expressions were extremely ugly, and when they walked to Bai Mei's side, they saw her covered in blood and in a disheveled state, as they couldn't conceal the disgust in their eyes. Bai Mei was so angry that she was trembling as her expression turned extremely ugly. But she could only suppress the anger in her chest as she clenched the dark Yin flute in her hands. Do you want to leave this place alive? Their eyes shone as they squatted down. You have a way to let us leave this place? Blue Dragon's appearance and Yi Qing Luo's advancement. It had already reversed the advantage which they originally had. Previously, Yi Qing Luo had to listen to their control. Those kids in the world group were also under their control, unable to move. But now, it was going to be difficult for them to leave this place alive. Bai Mei struggled to raise the dark Yin flute as the sharp cold glint faintly appeared. Use profound energy. Throw this flute into the sky. The people from Secluded Palace will bring us away. When she raised the dark Yin flute, Hall Master Wu Yin and Third Elder's eyes flashed with obvious greed. Their eyes were glued to the flute of darkness. They could clearly see the power of this flute. Not only could he control those little kids with the sound of the flute, it could even be used as a weapon to hurt Yi Qing Luo. Even the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace was afraid of this flute. The two of them looked at the flute greedily, their lips curling up uncontrollably. Just throw the flute out? While asking, the two of them reached for the flute with their hands. Such obvious greed. Bai Mei naturally saw it, but she pretended not to see it. He raised the darking flute and placed it in front of the two of them. That's right. Throw it into the sky with profound energy. The people from the Palace of Darkness will rush over to save us. Hall Chief Wu Yin could not help but smile as he glanced at Third Elder from the corner of his eyes. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and snatched the flute of dark Yin. The Third Elder's face darkened. Hall Leader Wu Yin, this flute is mine, she said, reaching out to snatch it. Chapter 42:25. As she spoke, she bit her finger and smeared her blood on the flute of dark Yin. Bitch! The Third Elder cursed angrily. But, just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Hall Leader Wu Yin suddenly let out a scream. Hall Leader Wu Yin, who had been grinning maliciously, twitched as he tried to throw the dark Yin flute in his hand. But no matter how much she swung her hand, The flute seemed to be glued to her hand. The third elder's expression turned ugly as he quickly looked at Bai Mei, who was lying on the ground. Bai Mei did not show much surprise on her face, looking at Hall Chief Wu Yan's lips curling into a cold smile. Her heart skipped a beat. This was obviously, Bai Mei had done it on purpose. Bai Mei knew how greedy they were. He had purposely used the flute of Darkeen. What was Bai Mei trying to do? Save me, save me. Hall Master Wu Yan screamed miserably as he tried to withdraw his hand from the Darkeen flute. Cornered and despairing, she actually turned her head. He looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction for help. Her face was filled with a twisted expression of pain. As though he had exhausted all the energy in his body, he walked towards Yi Qing Luo. She kept asking for help. Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms and stood on the eaves. A huge blue dragon coiled behind her. She had seen the interactions between Hall Chief Wu Yan, the third elder, and Bai Mei. He didn't stop her. He wanted to see what other tricks Bai Mei had up her sleeves. Gu Jingyu took advantage of the chaos to leave. Only the three of them were left here. She wanted to see if Bai Mei could still use that Darkeen flute to stir up any waves. As for Bai Mei, Hall Chief Wu Yan, and the third elder, she never intended to let go. Anyone who touches the reverse scale of a dragon will die. The Brothers of the World Group were her reverse scale. The three of them actually used the World Group to threaten her. Touching the World Group, she would not let a single one of them off. The young girl's bewitching eyes flickered with a bewitching red light, and a cold chill emerged. Her pink lips curled up into a mocking smile. That smile, Hall Master Wu Yan, who was crying for help, stopped in his tracks. His deathly pale face was filled with despair before death. She became even more anxious as she swung the flute of Darkeen with all her might. But at this moment, Hall Chief Wu Yan's hand began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then it was her body, 4 limbs, waist, lower body, as Hall leader Wu Yan gradually dried up. The withered body seemed to have lost all support. With a thud, he fell to the ground. His head hit the ground heavily. Then it withered as well. The screams stopped abruptly. Hall Chief Wu Yan was right in front of everyone's eyes. Bit by bit, he had turned into a dried corpse. Clatter! The flute of Darkeen fell to the ground. A dark and sinister aura lingered around the Darkeen flute. It was as if he was resting contentedly after eating and drinking his fill. The third elder looked at the flute again. At this moment, there was no longer any greed in his heart. Her hair stood on end, and a chill ran down her spine. Her entire body tensed up. If she had been the one to snatch the flute of Darkeen just now, the person who had turned into a dried corpse now would be her. Bai Mei, that slut, was simply too vicious. What are you still standing there for? Pick up the flute. Bai Mei's voice came from behind. The third elder's body froze as he stared at the unmoving flute of Darkeen on the ground, his entire body shivering. Chapter 42:26. As long as you don't have any crooked thoughts and attempt to form a blood pact with the Darkeen flute, nothing will happen. Bai Mei's lips curled sinisterly. Third elder's body tensed up as he broke out in cold sweat. Bai Mei knew right from the start that the Darkeen flute would suck human blood. She intentionally took out the Darkeen flute in order to lure their greedy hearts, using them as nourishment for the Darkeen flute. After seeing Bai Mei's true colors, Third Elder didn't dare to believe Bai Mei's words so easily. Third Elder, you're the only person I can rely on now. How could I possibly let anything happen to you? Bai Mei could tell the fear in Third Elder's heart as she laughed softly. Only I can control the Darkeen flute. Give it to me. Then we will have a chance to leave. Third Elder's body tensed up. His face was filled with a struggling expression. She had no choice. There was no way out. Not trusting Bai Mei, standing here, facing Yi Qing Luo, who had formed a contract with a blue dragon, she had no way to escape. Trusting Bai Mei, at least there was a chance of survival. After all, Bai Mei was already injured to the extent that she couldn't move. If Bai Mei could borrow the Darkeen flute to bring her out of here, she still had a chance to make a comeback. Third Elder clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed the surging thoughts in his heart as he walked towards the Darkeen flute. Passing Hall Head Wu Yan's dried corpse, third elder bent down, and his fingers trembled as he picked up the darking flute. Suddenly, a hurricane struck. Third elder's fingers had not even touched the darking flute. That hurricane had already swept the darking flute away. Furthermore, that Hall Head Wu Yan's dried corpse was also brought toward the direction. Just like that, the third elder grabbed the dried skin with his hand. Third elder was so shocked that he immediately let go as he retreated 2 steps backwards. That feeling in his hand had yet to dissipate. Third elder's face was pale as he used all his might to wipe his hand on his body. As he wiped, his face was steely green with a tinge of fear as he stared fiercely at the direction where the dark-een flute had been swept away. The young lady stood on the roof with a smile as she waved the raging flame fan in her hands gently, meeting with third elder's vengeful gaze. Her smile became even more beautiful, like a flower. I've already given you a chance. Unfortunately, you didn't take it. Third elder's face turned even paler. He was very clear that the opportunity, which Yiqing Luo mentioned, was referring to earlier when he didn't stop her and Hall Master Wu Yan from snatching the darking flute. If Yiqing Luo had stopped him earlier, there was a possibility that Hall Leader Wu Yan would not have died to the darking flute. Yiqing Luo moved her finger. The hurricane brought the glower flame fan directly in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei was so anxious that she sat up straight. The pain all over her body made her face pale. She broke out in a cold sweat and was so angry that her whole body was trembling. There seemed to be a fishy taste in his throat. She was angry, frustrated, and anxious. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. The flute of Dark Een was her last hope. He seemed to have seen the killing intent in Bai Mei's eyes. Yiqing Luo's smile became even sweeter. Bai Mei, it's precisely because this is your last hope, so how could I possibly give you a chance to save your life? She tilted her head as her brows were filled with a smile, but it was mixed with a different emotion. I will not let you off. Her words had just ended. A strong, profound energy poured down in torrents. The surrounding air started to congeal into pieces of ice frost. The raging hurricane crazily stirred up everything in the surroundings. Bai Mei didn't even have the energy to move as she was instantly entangled in that hurricane. Chapter 42:27. But unfortunately, the lady who was entangled in the hurricane, there wasn't a single wound on her body. Not even a single drop of blood splattered out. Third elder's pupils constricted abruptly. This hurricane, it wasn't Bai Mei's body that was hurt. It was her soul. Yiqing Luo wanted to torture Bai Mei's soul, to make Bai Mei suffer a fate worse than death. This method was even more painful than killing Bai Mei directly. Third elder's face turned pale as beads of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. No, absolutely could not go on like this if Bai Mei was tortured to death. The next one would be her turn. She didn't want to die, didn't want to be tortured to death by Yiqing Luo. Third elder was filled with fear. His gaze kept darting around. Suddenly, his gaze was fixed on a certain spot. Her heart suddenly started beating faster. Her pupils constricted as her breathing hastened. In her heart, 2 voices kept on fighting. Must find a way to protect herself. She couldn't let Bai Mei die. If Bai Mei was alive, then she could live. Third elder's eyes shot out a strong desire to live. His gaze carefully looked towards the direction of Yiqing Luo and the others, taking advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was on Bai Mei. Third elder restrained his presence as he quietly neared a certain spot. Her movements were extremely light and slow. It was completely silent, but she had neglected, beside the young lady, was a blue dragon which almost enveloped the heaven and earth. Third elder was just nearing the eaves. A strong, profound wave came crashing towards her. The blue dragon's tail fell in front of Third elder with a bam. Third elder's reaction was swift as he leaped and avoided the blue dragon's tail. But when the tail landed on the ground, it created a huge pit. Sand and gravel flew, and the aftershock shook. It also forced her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Blue Dragon's attack made everyone's gazes gathered over. But Before he could even notice the third elder who had been sent flying to the side of the cliff, the third elder who had been thrown to the side. Everyone was shocked by the sudden collapse of the eaves as they cried out in shock. The side of the cliff, the dilapidated temple, could not withstand the blue dragon's dragon might. The dragon's tail swung down. The aftershock, it made the shaky and broken temple collapse with a loud bang. Yiqing Luo, who was standing on the eaves, felt her feet lighten. The moment the ruined temple collapsed, the tip of his foot tapped lightly on the precipice beside it. Blue Dragon moved his body and caught the girl firmly. It was this gap. The third elder, who was sent flying, did not care about the pain from the fall. He clenched his teeth and fiercely pounced towards the ruins of the ruined temple. In front of death, all the pain was not worth mentioning. Gu Yuang, who wanted to live, had already led Third Elder's brain to make the most direct move. Oh no, Qing Luo, that old woman wants to snatch that flute. Yin Xiao Yi was shocked by Third Elder's actions as she immediately shifted her attention away from Yiqing Luo. When he saw the Third Elder dive into the ruins with the black flute in his hand, his expression changed. Quick, stop her! Seeing this, Lu Xiaoyu immediately ran towards Third Elder. The rest of the world group's youngsters also jogged over. That flute had just sucked a living person into a dried corpse. It was also that flute which caused them to be in so much pain that they wished they were dead, suffering unspeakably. They still didn't know what tricks the secluded palace had done to their bodies. But they were very clear. As long as they destroyed that flute,